All right, welcome in to the third rendition of the Boys of Summer Fantasy Baseball podcast. I am joined by my co-host Eric Follman.
Hey,
Eric,
hey.
welcome in today. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Ready to get another one of these down and away. The last time was pretty fun. I think everyone kind of enjoyed it. So I'm glad to kind of see how the things are progressing and see what we're at now.
They've been itching, they've been clawing, they've been asking. The pod is in high demand. People say they want to come on the pod, and then put something in the chat, and nobody wants any business. Nobody wants to talk that smack, so I guess we're gonna have to do it on overload today. Before we get started, let's talk about the season as a whole, the baseball season. I got the standings pulled up here. What's your biggest takeaway or your biggest surprise so far, and what you see from the standings in Major League Baseball?
Well, I don't like seeing the White Sox up top, but I've said this and I kind of said it last year's too. I think they're in, and I know I'm going to get criticism for this because I know the Central isn't strong either, but I think they're showing a little bit more. The AL Central is not too tough, and the Indians lost a little bit last year with Clevenger, kind of a surprising trade. So we'll see if they hang around. The Twins are awful this year, but I will say I think the Tampa Bay Rays are yet again proving in a really tough division because I thought the Jays were going to be good, which they are. Obviously they're young and still proving themselves, but the Yankees are finally getting going. The Red Sox, I think, have been surprised this year. And then you still have the Rays at a 619 win percentage, second best in baseball, just getting it done. The Tampa Bay Rays, yet again.
Yeah, I mean, they're just kind of big brain and everybody. I mean, let's be honest. If the Blue Jays were in the AL Central, they would be in first place, and the Chicago White Sox would not be. I mean, Cleveland is basically rebuilding. They traded Clevenger and Francisco Lindor, and they're in second place, and that's the biggest competition for the White Sox right now. So, I mean, yeah, sure, White Sox fans. Ooh, you're in first place. Congratulations. I mean, it's a little impressive considering all the injuries, but I mean, if you look at the division, their division is hot trash. I'm not ready to give up on the Twins yet. I still like a lot of the pieces that they have, and just kind of, especially on offense. I think that the guys are going to kind of start to come around. I don't think they're going to necessarily be sellers on offense. You think they've lost Buxton. I still think that their pitching is decent and their offense is definitely explosive. So I don't think it's time to give up on them yet with the warm weather coming around. I think they're going to hit a few more home runs, win a few more games.
11 games back in the wild card already, though. You think that's catchable?
Yeah, it's June. We got like
Oh
three
my.
months left in the year. Yeah, I think there's time.
Ooh.
That's not too big though.
But think about it though. Okay, they have 37 losses, right? So let's pretend they get in with 92 and 70. They would have to go 68 and 33.
It could happen.
All right, it's June.
It could happen.
Oh my. All right.
And then NL Central, love to see the Cubs on top. We've battled our fair share of injuries. We have absolutely no pitching staff, and to still be in first place is great. Maybe later in the pod we'll talk more about the substance abuse that's plaguing the MLB. Maybe some steroid talk. Probably not steroid talk. That's not really relevant. But anything else? Our final thoughts on the league as a whole. But let's jump right into kind of where we are at and in the league. So what I have pulled up here is these are our standings the last time we did the podcast. So the last time we did the podcast, your boy here, the commish, was in first place. This is for our combined rankings. This is our head-to-head rankings, followed by my dad, Phil, then Peter, Chad, just the blah team, who shall not be named, Justin, David, Crimmy, Bryce, you, Tyler, Jay, Chris, and Eddie. So these were kind of what our standings were looking like last time we did the pod, and we have seen some drastic changes since then. If we click over to what the head-to-head standings are year to date now, we will see Phil in first place, just a blah team in second place.
Rising.
Rapidly rising. I've dropped down to third. Bryce, another surprise, in fourth place, followed by Peter, Chris, then Crimmy, Justin, Chad, Jay, Eric down in 11th. Ooh. Tyler, or wait, no, who did I say? Oh, not Crimmy. Crimmy was 7th. David was 7th. Crimmy is 13th. Then Eddie is in last place. Those are head-to-head standings.
And I'll tell you what, just looking at those, I mean, to show like the parity right now, the difference between 10th and second is 6 games back. I mean, literally 6 categories right now. And I know sometimes you have to make that up over a couple weeks, but it goes to show you can string together a couple 8-9 win weeks, even 7-2-1 weeks. I mean, it's still so early. You're gonna fly up those leaderboards, unlike the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah. Do you prefer to do it as like a category as a win or a wins win? Would you rather walk out of a week 6-4 or walk out of week 1-0?
I like the categories. I think it kind of shows it a little bit more. It sucks when you have a really good week, because one of the things I found on the website, and it's not like I found it, I like hitting that all teams button right next to the matchup, because it kind of shows every team's stats for the week: home runs, RBIs, steals. And when you lose to someone that has more home runs than you, and you find out like you're second in the league that week, that's tough. So I like being able to be rewarded for doing well in certain categories and doing all that, because the 1001 stuff, those can be heartbreakers, especially when you see other teams winning certain other categories. So I prefer it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easier to kind of make up at the same time. It's harder to make up at the same time, but easier at the same time. Like one good week and go 9-1, you could make up a ton of ground. Where if you're 2-3 games back, 2-3 losses back, that's gonna be really hard to make up that
Sure.
round. You can't lose. Some would argue otherwise, but I'm also the type that would lose every week 4-5-1 and find myself in last place. So here's where we're at in the standings. We'll click over to Roto now. Here are our Roto standings. You can find them in season stats. We got sliding into the DMs, Mr. Chris Zajac, and taking over first place by quite a wide margin, followed by Peter, then Dave, myself, Phil, Bryce, Chad, Jay, Eric, Justin, Crimmy, Dave, T-Pain, which is Tyler, and Eddie. So those are our current Roto standings. Remember that the Roto standings pay out 1 through 3, with our first place taking home 500, second place taking home 200, and our third place taking home 100. And then we will have one head-to-head champion who was our World Series fantasy winner at the end. And that's how the money will be divvied up this year. So what have been your biggest surprises? And you can go with either Roto or head-to-head, and where we were last time to where we are now, Eric.
I would say Bryce's team. I think Bryce's team is a pretty big surprise at this point. I know you said we both weren't super duper high on his team, but I think he's putting together quite a nice little team there. And obviously, I know we're going to talk more about these guys later. I know we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into them, but Bryce has proven himself. Now, his trade offers, on the other hand, as we discussed in the chat, have been a little different than that. But he's getting production from the guys he needed to get production from, and you can't say that always for every team. The guys that he paid a lot of money for, he's getting that back from. Like I said, we're going to look more into those teams specifically when we get that shot. But I'll say Bryce right now. What about you?
Yeah, if you look at Bryce's numbers, Bryce actually has the number 1 offense in the league right now, coming at 61.5 of his Roto points are coming from the offensive side of the ball. So that is something that's pretty impressive from Bryce's team. I don't know if it's sustainable. He's got a lot of guys like Tyler O'Neill and Jesus Aguilar who are playing out of their minds right now. I don't know if it's sustainable. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. You'll see in his ratings here, he's got 1 point in wins, quality starts, 1 point in strikeouts. So to have those two categories to be that far behind is something that it's going to be really difficult to really gain any more categories, because if you think about what the upside of his team is how many more points does he have to gain in offense, which is even possible.
Right.
I mean, it's only possible for him to gain like 5 or 6 more points in offense. And then, the pitching, it's going to be tough for him to get out of wins, quality starts, and strikeouts. He's up there in saves, ERA, and whip. I mean, I think the big battle is going to be he's going to have like a 2-month stretch where he's going to have to completely punt saves, and then he's going to have to go with 7 starters to try and make up that ground and wins, quality starts, and strikeouts. And
Sure.
those might be the only points he can make to get up out of 6th and into probably the top 3 to kind of place in that money, which might sacrifice him some saves, ERA, and whip. So we'll kind of see how he navigates that. He doesn't have the horses right now in his pitching staff to do that. So he's going to have to make a few moves, maybe bring in a few pitchers. We've had some discussions. I know he's had some discussions with some other teams on getting him some pitching, but we'll see how things go. Let's see here. I think that the biggest surprise from last time to this time is Not a surprise to me, but Chris sliding into the DMs, taking over first place in a resounding fashion. I mean, I said it last time. I mean, his team doesn't really have a lot of weakness. His lowest category, he has 7 points in. And strikeouts is probably the easiest category to go up and down in based on just how many starts you have in any given week. So, I mean, he has a very well-rounded team. I called it out last week. I said, I like the way his team's looking. He made that trade, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, where he sent out Francisco Lindor, but he is reaping the benefits of that trade, and he is seeing it because not Kyle Hendricks, what's his first name? Hendricks. Liam Hendricks is just been balling out. He's been getting saves left and right, and that's why he's got up to 10 points in saves. He's been a surprise. Obviously, Just a Blah team has been quite the surprise, rising up those Roto rankings. If we look back to the Roto rankings last time, Dave was down in 14th. He was in last place in Roto rankings. So he went from 14th to 3rd in a matter of a month, like a month and 4 days. So all you anti-Roto people that say, oh, well, I'm down 9th or 10th or 11th, that's, oh, I can't make
it's
that.
It's early, as you said. It is early. It is early.
Yes, we see that. It's not just in head-to-head where you can make up those values and kind of rise up the rankings. We're seeing it right now with Dave's team. We'll get a little bit more in depth into those teams in a little bit. As you said, what's been your kind of biggest disappointment from last month to this month?
And I don't want to even say they're disappointments because I'm kind of expecting the teams on the bottom to stay on the bottom. So that's not really a surprise for me, but I'll kind of throw out a couple names. Myself is one. I hate where I'm at right now in the standings. I really feel like I should be higher. I'm sure a lot of people feel that about their own teams as well. So maybe that's just my own self-talking. I feel like I got a couple aces that should be really carrying me along. I've had some injuries. Bellinger's been out a while. I know I traded for Robert. Then I had Harper magically on the IL for 2 weeks without him getting taken out of the lineup because of awesome news reports on the player news. But I'm a little disappointed in my team right now. I'm hoping that I can start climbing up these rankings soon with the guys I have coming back. And also the guy I have as the champion of the league, Jay, I don't think he's in a bad spot in the league, but I'm still I look at his team and I don't hate it. And I still think Jay's team has a lot of potential if he can really get it going. That Adolis Garcia guy has been an absolute wonder for him at this point so far. And I still think we can see him climbing up. He's slowly getting there, but we'll see. What about you?
Yeah, I have some stuff to say about Jay's team. I'll save it for a little bit later. But yeah, biggest disappointment. I thought Tyler's team would be playing a little bit better, but obviously when you lose the 5-time MVP, I don't know how many MVPs Mike Trout has by this point, but you lose Mike Trout for, basically half the season, you're going to fall down the rankings. He's been a disappointment. Justin's been a little disappointing. His team, his players, we've talked a lot on the phone about it. His offense just is not performing. He's got a lot of guys on his offense just haven't turned it on yet, who haven't been able to flick the switch. Yeah, my co-commish has been pretty disappointing. I've never been high on Crimmy's team, on Crim's crew. So I kind of expect to see him down around the 10th. It's not that his team is bad. I just don't really like a lot of the guys that he has. And I think just personal, a little confirmation bias there. And then I think probably the biggest disappointment who I was expecting to see at the top for all year was actually Chad's team. We looked at Chad's team and we go, oh, Chad's got all this offense. He's got all this power. He's going to lead the league in home runs, RBIs. It's not going to be particularly close. And if we look at the offensive standings right now, Chad has the 9th most hitting points. And he just traded Giancarlo Stanton for Whit Merrifield. So he's going to maybe climb up the ranks in stolen bases. But if we look at Chad's offense now, it's not all that much desired. It's fallen a little bit. So it's kind of funny how things can change quickly in a matter of 2 months here. So as we kind of move on from that, there's some teams we were right about, some teams that we were wrong about. I was right about Chris, Dave kind of rising up the leaderboards a little bit. I was wrong about Justin and Bryce. You were right about Peter and Eddie and being right kind of where they belong. And then you're a little bit wrong about David Long. You might have to eat some crow here in a little bit. Chris and Bryce as well. You were not as high on Chris's team.
Still not.
Still not. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Getting a little jab in there early. All right. So with that being said, let's move over to our top waiver wire acquisitions so far. I can tab over to that tab. I have the whole list here of what my biggest takeaways are, but since our last pod in the last month, what has been your biggest impact waiver wire acquisition so far?
Well, honestly, I mean, are you last month or last couple months you're saying?
I'd say from the last month, none of the guys that we talked about last time.
This one's kind of tough because we're really getting to the point where it's starting to get more and more, I don't want to say dry, but I mean, for lack of a better word, it is getting more and more tough to find players that are contributing at this point. You might have more guys coming up throughout the season, but it's tough right now. I will say as of right now, I think Nico Goodrum was an interesting one. I know you mentioned that he got traded a couple times or got sent around on 2 different teams. We got Spencer Turnbull is another
Nico
young.
Goodrum has been passed around like a cheap whore. That's how much he has been on. He has been on so many teams. I
Right.
know I had dibs on him first. I had a claim on him, but I just couldn't
Mhm.
seal the deal. I'm not a very good closer when it comes to that kind of thing. But yeah, he's been passed around to a couple teams. A couple guys, these guys have. Some of these waiver wire guys have cropped up a few times.
I think Brandon Crawford's a big one too. Brandon Crawford's putting kind of like this renaissance offensive season that he's never really had before outside of his All-Star year, and he's doing a lot out there in San Francisco.
Brandon Crawford has 14 home runs, 41 RBIs, and 35 runs scored. Now, 262 average ain't great, but I mean, he's also got a 354 on base percentage. That's still well above average. Yeah, Brandon Crawford is definitely a big one. I think my biggest one so far is actually Rich Hill. Pitcher Rich Hill. He was scooped up a couple weeks ago by my father, Phil, and he's actually slotted right into his lineup, and he has just pitched lights out. I mean, just shutout after shutout after shutout, it seems like, with him, and he's had quite a big impact. Some other names that we should throw in here: Spencer Turnbull, obviously had the no-hitter. He was traded right after the no-hitter. Jonathan Villar was picked up by myself. He's been in my lineup for a couple weeks. He's hit a lot of home runs, stolen a few bases. Akil Badu's contributed. Patrick Wisdom now is in Tyler's lineup, hitting bombs against me. Freddie Galvis has got 9 home runs for Tyler. Alek Manoah for Jay. We'll see how he rounds around the rest of the year. Brandon Crawford for Chris, you mentioned him. Avisail Garcia, I mean, God, he's got like 12 home runs, and I don't really understand why. And then Justin scooping up Luis Garcia as well, who's got like a 2.5 ERA. Those guys have all contributed to the teams that they were picked up on. Any further comments on some of those guys or anyone else that I forgot to mention?
I'm curious how Manoah will do. I know he's a hot shot prospect coming up. Badu started off really good, kind of shaking out a little bit. We'll see if he can kind of turn it around. Obviously, Wisdom, we've seen what he's done as Cubs fans. And honestly, with the way Bodie's playing, why not keep the hot bat in? If Wisdom stays in there all year and it doesn't seem like Chris Bryant's playing much third base anymore, I mean, keep him in while he's hot, and heck, he's real hot. He's about as hot as you can get as a baseball player.
Never mess with a streak.
Nope.
Not in baseball. Some honorable mentions on that list were Brad Miller, Cesar Hernandez, Jonathan Scope, Lucas Sims, and Tariq Skubal. The reason why I kind of left them off the list is because although they have contributed to the fantasy community, they haven't really contributed to the teams that they've been picked up on. They've either been tucked away on the bench, or just we kind of haven't really broken out yet, or their stats were they accumulated their stats before they were actually picked up by their respective teams.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go into our recent trades. And now with some of these trades, or to the recent trades tab, we'll go from the most recent and then kind of work our way back. We can kind of give our thoughts, and let's give a grade for each team, how we think they did. So if you want to say, well, first, Bryce gets an A for this trade, and Jay gets whatever grade for this trade. We'll talk about each, and we'll kind of give our grades for each and talk about each pretty quickly. So let's start at the top. Mackenzie Gore and Chris Paddock for Kyle Hendricks. What'd you make of this trade?
I liked it a lot. For Bryce, I think that getting Mackenzie Gore, I know how you feel on prospects, and I don't really know how soon he will come up because San Diego does have a lot of guys. I was very shocked that Gore was taken ahead of Franco. I'm sure you can make an argument for it, but with how many pitchers the Padres have, I don't know when he will come up, and if he does, they might do the whole minor league or relief pitching, get innings thing that kind of Kopech's doing in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure on that, but getting Paddock, I really like Chris Paddock. I'm a huge believer in him. I think he's going to get you a little bit of Ks, have a solid ERA moving forward. Is he quite the tier of a Hendricks? No, but I think this year and moving forward, I really like it. I don't hate it for Jay. He needs a pitcher, and Hendricks has been pitching well as of late, starting to finally kind of get that ERA down. But with his whip and him not being a strikeout guy, I would argue Hendricks has kind of been a negative as a fantasy player this year.
Yeah.
Obviously he started off on my team, but I like it overall for Bryce. I'll give him kind of the better part of this trade as of right now, but I don't hate it for either side.
Yeah. Kyle Hendricks also passed around like a bong at a college frat party. Yeah, I like this trade for Bryce as well. Chris Paddock and Kyle Hendricks, I kind of put them in the same tier. Chris Paddock, I think, has more upside, but Kyle Hendricks has like an 8-year track record of being a very good pitcher. I am pretty confident he's going to turn things around. I think there's been a lot of pressure on him, obviously being a number one for the first time in his career. So I think that's kind of gotten in his head a little bit. Yeah, the whip's not there. His command has been what we've expected it to be. And Chris Paddock, I like the upside, but I think right now probably Kyle Hendricks is still the better pitcher. Chris Paddock's not really going deep into games, but to get Mackenzie Gore on top of that, I'm not a huge Mackenzie Gore fan. I was last year, but Mackenzie Gore has really struggled in the minors. I mean, he's scratched from this start. He's battled some injuries. I think he's had blisters, and his command has been awful. And that's the main reason why they haven't been able to call him up. I think they've wanted to. They just haven't really been able to because he's pitching so bad. So
number one pick in the reserve draft.
Yeah. So for this trade, I'm going to give Bryce an A- for this one, and I'm going to give Jay probably a B for this one. I think it fit the needs of both teams, but I think that in terms of what the assets they got, I like Bryce's side a lot better. All right, so let's move to the second trade, which is Whit Merrifield for Giancarlo Stanton. A lot of these trades that we're going to see, that we're going to talk about, I just think they're just really category swaps. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about this trade other than it's a category swap. Giancarlo Stanton's injury prone. Whit Merrifield's going to get you stolen bases. Do you have any takeaways from this, or does each team just get a B?
I would actually argue a little bit more that Chad got the better on this, and I do like Giancarlo Stanton, obviously, for his power and everything he can do, but with his injury concerns, and if you honestly look at like RBIs, runs scored, everything, Whit Merrifield beats this dude in everything except for home runs. So
Yeah.
honestly, like I like Whit Merrifield a little bit more. I do agree with what you're saying though, in terms of, is it pretty much a category swap? Yes. One needs home runs, the other needs steals, but Whit Merrifield's having a season.
There is an 80 at bat difference between the two. So if you look at their counting stats, like RBIs and runs, I mean, Whit Merrifield does have 80 more at bats. So if Giancarlo Stanton had 230 at bats like Whit Merrifield does, yeah, he would probably have close to 40 RBIs and 35 runs scored.
But that's a valid concern though, because of his injury issues.
But
I mean, that is.
And the reason he doesn't is because he's always on the shelf. The best ability is availability, and Giancarlo Stanton doesn't always have that.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, I'm just gonna give it a B for both teams. You're gonna side with Jay on that? Or with Chad?
Yeah, Chad a little bit. I mean, I like Whit Merrifield a little bit more this year. I do think they paid a lot for him, but he's doing a good job. So yeah, it's really a toss up, but yeah.
All right, Kyle Seager for Jamer Candelario. I'll give each team a C+. I think each team got what they wanted.
Nothing more to talk about there. Yeah, I needed some ribbies.
Yeah, Pavin Smith for Nico Goodrum.
Not much there.
Sure. Doesn't really matter. Josh Bell for Dominic Smith and Matthew Boyd. Looks like Matthew Boyd and Dominic Smith going to the Beantown Boys, which is just another arm for Bryce. If he can kind of put things together, and he, just needs kind of some arms to throw out there to eat some innings, get his strikeouts and wins quality starts up. But ironically, Matthew Boyd is not the guy you want if you want wins, quality starts, or strikeouts. He's got only 54 strikeouts in 68 innings.
And this is one of his best ERAs of his career. And I had Boyd earlier in the year. And I was just kind of waiting for that to fall off, because I mean, this is literally the best year he's ever had in his career, and it's okay. It's not great. So, and the thing with Dominic Smith too is he's got no power right now, no power at all. And Josh Bell, I think, is starting to turn it around a little bit. Still not great numbers though.
Yeah, no, 217 batting average. It's not great, but I mean, David getting his guy, you're going to overpay for your guy a little bit. If I had to grade this trade for Bryce, I'll give Bryce a B. I'll give Dave a C plus.
That, I would say about that too, just because I know that they both getting needs, right? Because
Yeah.
Bryce, we'll see as we get into it, needs pitching. You've already kind of alluded to that, so.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. We have Edwin Diaz for Andrew Vaughn and Spencer Turnbull. Kind of an interesting trade, kind of a little bit of a polarizing trade. I mean, Spencer Turnbull was picked up off waiver wire like a week before this trade happened and then traded for like a top 5 closer in the league. So I think there's a little bit of volatility here, a little polarizing, like I said. So Andrew Vaughn and Spencer Turnbull heading over to Crimmy and Edwin Diaz heading over to David. I think it's kind of another trade that kind of met the needs of both teams. Doesn't really blow me away. I think for Dave to get 2 elite closers, which he has on his team now, he's got Edwin Diaz and I believe he's got Craig Kimbrell. Yeah, so to get 2 kind of top 5, top 8 closers is going to be good for him with pretty good ERAs to kind of round out his rotation if he didn't really have a need for Spencer Turnbull. I kind of like the trade for him. What do you think?
Yeah, again, I agree with kind of what we said with the other trades, that they both were getting needs. Crimson had a lot of saves. He's already got a dominant closer. He was able to kind of expend Diaz for, I think, a now and a future move, because Turnbull has done really well this year. 4-2 with a 2.88 ERA, 50 innings. He's going to be on the shelf for a little bit longer, but really a pretty decent season so far from him. Decent strikeout numbers. And then you get Andrew Vaughn. Crimson needs offense. Vaughn has proven to be kind of like the everyday guy there for the most part in Chicago right now. Not
Proven
great
to
numbers,
play.
but again,
He hasn't proven to play well.
not well, but he's been proven to be the guy getting the everyday at bats now, and he is a rookie. I'm sure as time moves on, I like this move honestly for both. Like you said, Dave gets another closer, rocking the 2 closer approach, while Crimson gets starting pitching that he needs, and then a bat which progressively could look good this year and next.
Yeah, I'll give an A- to Dave because picking up a guy off the waiver wire for an elite closer with Andrew Vaughn, who hasn't really done a whole lot, I think that's a pretty good deal. I'll give Crimmy a B.
Yeah, I'll give both Bs. Like I said, I can see it from both sides for sure.
All right, Justin Upton and Griffin Canning for Tommy Pham. My boy, Tommy Pham.
Oh yeah.
Over, and he has just swiped a shit ton of bases. So represent Tommy Pham, hit a few home runs. I think he had like 1 home run when I made the trade and like 4 steals. So he's really kind of lit up those categories. He's hitting leadoff, but you'd like his RBI and run numbers to be a little bit higher, especially for 175 at bats. I mean, you'd think he'd be more like a 30-30 when it comes to home runs or when it comes to runs scored and RBIs. And then Justin Upton has kind of lit the world on fire, 14 home runs. I was not expecting him to be like top 10 in home runs this year in that stretch. If you kind of look at his game log, he's just done a lot of damage lately. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 home runs in his last 6 games, 5, 6 home runs in about his last 2 weeks. So he's been really hot. Griffin Canning was dropped to waivers, but I think just the 1-for-1 swap was kind of fit the needs of both teams. I know Chris needed power. I needed a higher upside guy.
Yeah, agreed. Outfield for outfield, you got the steals, you got another trade piece there that you can throw around and see if anyone bites. And he gets Justin Upton, who, like you said, is kind of turning back the clock a little bit. Average isn't great, but home runs and RBIs, 2 categories right there.
Yeah, I don't think that trade really needs a grade. It's just kind of minimal.
Yeah.
Same thing with this next one: Huascar Ynoa and Austin Hayes for Frankie Montas and Nate Eovaldi. So again, Jay picking up just a few meddling starting pitchers for Ynoa and Hayes. Hayes has been hurt. Ynoa's been hurt. I mean, this trade wasn't great for Tyler just because of the injuries.
Sure.
Maybe it would have had a higher upside if those guys stayed healthy.
But Noah was having a pretty good year up to that point, and
yeah.
Hayes was doing okay. Not great, but okay.
But I know Frankie Montas and Eovaldi. I think Eovaldi's been in Jay's lineup, but they haven't really pitched that well.
Right. And Eovaldi's again one of those guys where he's gonna get some wins because he plays for the Red Sox, but he's just always like that 4 ERA guy every year. It's hard when he's had some years where he's shown a little bit of this and that, but just that's what you can count on.
Especially when there's like probably 100 pitchers this year that have sub 4 ERAs.
Yes.
Baseball. This next one, Randy Rosarena and Vidal Brujan for Lance Lynn. Travis Shaw was, I think, dropped. or maybe I think he's still on the squad, but I know he hasn't played. This has been a trade that has kind of interestingly been beneficial for both teams. I think that David wasn't really a big fan of Lance Lynn, and he's pitched really well for Justin, really helped his pitching. Randy Rosarena was really cold when he traded him. And then since that trade, I guess it lit a fire under his ass because he started hitting homers. He's got 10 stolen bases. So I think he's played really well. He needed a change of scenery. And then Vidal Brujan, I'm actually hearing that he's going to be up before Wander Franco.
Look at his numbers in the minors. He's doing everything.
I don't know if I can view him from here. I'd have to open up a new tab.
But yeah, he's doing. I'll tell you right
here. Oh yeah, holy cow! 13 steals, 21 RBIs, 18 walks, 305 of 4.7.
7 homers.
Yeah,
and that's only in 120 ABs.
That's a nice
little stat line right there.
But I actually just got done reading an article about how any of the prospects nowadays, there's been like 2 exceptions, Brian Hayes and Ian Anderson. The rest of the prospects that have been called up in the last 2 years have all struggled. I mean,
I think not having a minor league season last year is huge. I mean, you're literally not playing baseball at all last year, except at an alternate site. You're not getting that same competition. You're not getting that. I think it's had a huge impact. Look at Kalenic, stuff like that, just not playing every day.
Yeah, exactly. So and then I'm gonna pull out some of the names here, but if you think about guys who just came up and struggled, some of these guys are playing well now, but Joe Adell, Nate Pearson, Joey Bart, Spencer Howard, Evan White, Christian Pache, Dalton Varsho, Andrew Vaughn, Alex Kirilloff, Daniel Lynch, Logan Gilbert, like all those guys all struggled off the bat. Now, some of these guys in the second year have started to turn things around, like Jazz Chisholm, Casey Mize, Tariq Skubal, Dylan Carlson, Logan Gilbert, like those guys starting to turn things around, but like it takes a while for some of these prospects to get acclimated with the major leagues. I was thinking that Kalenic was going to come up and be 2020 the rest of the year. Yeah. I'm not wrong.
Yeah, well, hopefully not the same for Franco whenever that happens.
Yeah. All right, next one we got Dane Dunning and Trent Grisham for Kyle Hendricks and Eduardo Rodriguez. Why don't you take us through this one?
Yeah, obviously Hendricks just got swapped around in the other trade. Again, I look at Eduardo Rodriguez. I had a lot of arms. Obviously, I traded 2 of them away right there in Hendricks and Rodriguez. I really liked Grisham. Obviously, at that point in the season, this was only a couple days after our last podcast, so we're almost going back over a month now. Grisham I like a lot, and I think he's going to be a star. He's getting steals. He's got good average. Yeah, he's doing good, man. I mean, when you look at how many home runs he has,
though? Is he Giancarlo Stanton without power?
We'll see. But I'm liking him so far. I needed the steals really at the end of the day. I needed it. I look at Kyle Hendricks. Even if he does become a 3.5 ERA pitcher the rest of his career, I don't know if that's sustainable fantasy wise sometimes because of his Ks. And Eduardo Rodriguez, again, I had the extra arms. He was expendable, and since I have traded him, he has been absolutely atrocious. In fact, since I've traded him, he's not had a start under a 6 he finally had one under a 5 ERA, but his most recent starts were 6, 9, 9, 11, and 5 ERA. So he's been awful to this point. So I feel like I did all right here, and I got Dunning thrown in as well, who can kind of be a spot starter for me, or if he starts 2 times in a week.
He's not going deep into games, but he can contribute sometimes.
Right, and he gets more than 9 Ks per 9. So he's a nice little spot starter I can throw in whenever I need to.
Yeah. I'd probably give you like an A- for this trade, probably even closer to an A. I mean, Kyle Hendricks and Eduardo Rodriguez haven't really been contributors to fantasy teams, and Trent Grisham obviously has. Lighting up those steals, and once he gets off the IL, he'll definitely be a contributor. He'll score some runs. I don't know if the RBIs will be there. I don't know if he's going to be all of a sudden be a big power guy. But I mean, he might hit 15 home runs by the end of the year, and he'll definitely steal some bases. So kind of like that one. I can't remember let's see, this is May 7th. So I think this was the last trade that we didn't cover. Would have been Altuve for Will Smith, Luis Robert, and Gene Sekura. Let's see here. So you sent out Altuve. You got quite the big haul back. Altuve since then has played really well. He's up to 10 home runs, a 293 average, 40 runs scored. And then to take on Will Smith, Luis Robert, and Gene Segura, I like this for both teams.
Yeah, Will Smith obviously ERA wise isn't there, but I'm needing him for one category and one category only, which is saves.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that's where I get it from. I'm trying to climb my way back up in those rankings. And Segura is surprised. I shouldn't even say surprisingly. I've always kind of liked him as a ball player, and there's no reason to believe he wasn't going to be good this year. And I think he's proving that again, getting me some steals here and there, hitting in front of Harper and some of those other big guys, which helps. And Robert, obviously, if I'm holding on to him this long, he's probably going to be a keeper for me. He had 4 steals in such a limited time. I think he could be a 25 guy. That's
Mhm.
obviously what a lot of people think. So I know he was paid a heavy price, but I can afford it. And I feel like, hey, that 3-for-1 haul, I give up a star, but hopefully I can get some contribution back.
Yeah, I'd like to go back, and there's 3 trades in particular that I think have had a pretty huge impact on the landscape of the league. I mean, there's been some decent deals in here. I mean, McKenzie for Kepler, I think I kind of like that one. The Lindor Hendricks swap, I think, was kind of what propelled um, Chris into kind of where he is at today. I had my criticisms. I thought he could have gotten more for a name like Francisco Lindor, but Liam
Yeah, we
Hendricks
both did, really. Yeah.
Dansby Swanson was exactly what he needed. And it's helped his team immensely. It's gotten him up to first place right now in the Roto standings. So I can't knock that one. But the first trade I want to talk about, I'm actually going to have to go back to this, would be this trade here. Wilson Contreras heading my way for Ian Kennedy and Kevin Gausman. What was I thinking? Kevin
Gausman's having a
Gausman
year.
is the #1 pitcher in points leagues, not Roto, but oh my God, 93 strikeouts in 77 innings, a 1.27 ERA, a 0.7 whip. He has absolutely been lighting the world on fire. If you look at, he hasn't given up an earned run in 4 starts.
Yeah. I wonder what he's got under his hat.
I didn't even realize those last 2 runs, the Cubs game, I didn't even realize those runs were unearned.
Yeah. I mean,
Holy
yeah.
smokes. 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. He hasn't given up more than 1 run in like 8 starts. That is absolutely.
And you know what you did? You traded it for a god dang fantasy catcher, Kyle.
I know.
A
That's like, I don't
fantasy
know what.
catcher, my guy.
I was desperate. I had so many arms. I just wanted
And
an
I think we all
upgrade
liked the move
somewhere.
at the time. You got one of the best hitting catchers in the league. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's funny how we look at it back then, but who expected Gausman to do that? I mean, come on now.
And Ian Kennedy has 12 saves
Yeah.
with a
So
2.5 ERA. So things might look, it wouldn't look too much different for me because I'm leading the league in ERA. I'm leading the league in whip. Pretty high up there in strikeouts and wins quality starts. It wouldn't have changed too much for me, but it certainly would have given me a pretty bigger trade shift at this point as well. Next one I want to look at is Chapman and Judge. I mean, that was a pretty big trade, but I don't think it really changed a whole lot. This trade between me and the Beantown boys, if you look at what Conforto, Josh Bell, and Victor Robles have become, they have not really been assets at all this year. And in that return, I was able to get Zach Gallen, Dylan Carlson, Jose Urquidy, and Ketel Marte. That is quite the haul for 3 players who have not contributed this year. And it hasn't really put me over the top by any means, but those guys are like 4 trade chips that I hope to use in the near future.
especially,
For a guy.
go ahead. Oh no, especially when what is Bryce's biggest need right now? It's pitching.
Pitching, yeah.
And Gallen, I know Gallen hasn't pitched a lot this year. I get that. Urquidy's finally kind of getting some time. He's only got 55 innings, but I mean, yeah, I mean that's what he needs right now, and that's what he gave up. So it's tough. That's tough.
Yeah. Breaking news into the podcast. White Sox place second baseman Nick Madrigal on the 60-day IL. He's going to be out 2 months. The injury bug
They keep piling up.
Just keeps biting the Chicago White Sox. I don't like to see it. I mean, we talk a lot of smack about the White Sox. We hope that Chicago teams succeed. But it's a real shame.
Yeah.
There was one other trade that I wanted to highlight. Oh, and it was Liam Hendricks Lindor trade. All right. So we covered all that. All right. So at this time, our plan is we're going to do our power rankings. We're going to go from the bottom up, and we're going to go in order of our aggregate power rankings. So starting with our 14th team. Now, Eric and I still have some different rankings. We'll talk about those as we go along. But our 14th ranked team should be no surprise to anyone, but it is Eddie Mazur's team. He is Team Pablo Sanchez, not playing like Pablo Sanchez, the exact polar opposite. All right, what do you make about Eddie's team?
Not a whole lot more to say here. I think he's missing a lot of offense. He's the one that has Nick Madrigal on his team, so that hurts as well. Obviously, you got guys like Muncy that are doing well. Jordan's doing okay, starting to finally do a little bit. But I mean, where is the offense? Jordan and Max Muncy are your two best offensive players, so that makes it tough. Trevor Story comes back soon, so obviously he'll help a little bit. But even his season has been very okay to this point, not great, and they need some type of all-star going to the game in Colorado, so they need something there. Pitching wise, there is not a single one or two in this rotation outside of Carlos Rodon, who unfortunately is a C player because no one thought he was going to be good this year. So
Yeah.
he doesn't even really have that to look forward to in terms of keepers next year. There's not a whole lot to like here because his other best pitcher is John Gant, who is also a C pitcher.
Yeah.
So it's tough going for Eddie right now, our reigning league champion.
John Gant has been such a curious case. You see his numbers right now, 2.6 ERA and a 1.59 whip.
He's getting lucky. He's getting some balls rolling his way. Yeah.
Absolutely absurd. It is not a 2.6 ERA is not sustainable for John Gant, although he has just continued to throw quality starts. I don't understand it, but he gave up 7 runs in his last start. So I get back a little bit. But before then, 0 runs, 2, 0, 1, 1, 0, 2. I mean, he's throwing nonstop quality starts, but it's what was he got? He got 5 wins quality starts. Yeah, it's not a good pitching staff. Now, the silver lining, it's not really a silver lining for this year, but it's going to be interesting to see what Eddie does. Carlos Rodon is a great asset at the trade deadline for him to see if he can get some kind of keepers going in for next year. Like, I know I personally would give up a guy like Noah Syndergaard to get a guy like Carlos Rodon, who Eddie could use next year. Another guy he's got is Cedric Mullins, who ironically, again, is on a C contract, who's got 9 home runs, 9 stolen bases, and 34 runs scored.
At this point, they're worthless. Might as well trade him, right?
Yeah, with 392 on base percentage. Yeah, it's going to be really tough for Eddie to dig himself out of the hole he's in. He's got like 30 roto points. He's pretty far behind in the standings. He's in 14th place in both roto and head-to-head. He's only got 21 wins, which puts him 20 wins out of a playoff spot. So it's not looking too good for him. He may need to start turning towards the future unless he thinks his team's really going to turn it around. But that's going to be hard to do without Nick Madrigal and some of the injuries that he's had. Trevor Story is also probably going to be an interesting trade piece too. I would trade Trevor Story if I was him because I don't think I would keep Trevor Story at $36, especially if he's not playing in Coors Field next year.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing to think about with the league and trades is just because you trade for a guy doesn't mean you necessarily have to keep him. Like if you think Trevor Story can help you this year and win this year, trade for him and don't keep him. But as long as he's helping your team this year, that's what matters. So because I know I'm starting to hear a lot of guys starting to think, what are my 12 keepers? What are my 12 keepers? Well, if you think you have 14 or 15, trade a couple, get something back, or trade for someone that can help you right now. So it's not always about the future, but in terms of Eddie's case, like you said, maybe it's time to start thinking about that. He's got a lot of prospects, so he's already looking forward to it.
Yeah. And I mean, some of these prospects though, like who knows when they're going to get up and if they're even going to be worth that kind of money.
Right.
So
Certainly.
It is kind of interesting. We'll kind of see how things pan out. And you never know who's going to need Tommy John surgery either. A keeper can become a non-keeper real quick. All right, so we're going to move on to our 13th team. We technically don't have a 13th team. We got 2 tied for 12. And let's start with our first one, which is going to be David Luzak Wambolt. So we'll call him David W. We'll page over to his team here. David is actually doing pretty well. His team is COVID-free. His team's actually doing really well. If we look at kind of where he's at in the head-to-head standings, in head-to-head, he's actually just outside. He's actually tied for 6th. So depending on what the tiebreaker would be, he might actually be in the playoffs right now. But he's 12th in Roto, and I think we can agree that we don't really love his prospects going forward. His team, he's got some guys that have played really well. Jazz Chisholm, Brandon Lau's got some power, but no on-base percentage. He probably is the worst on-base percentage team in the entire league. A lot of these guys just aren't really great names. I think he could trade Yohan Moncada and get a pretty decent haul back, considering Yohan Moncada's got a .417 on-base percentage, but not a whole lot else. Jorge Soler is power only. Verdugo has played well, but for 14, that's still kind of an overpay. Cronenworth has been okay, scored a lot of runs. Garrett Hampson, I think you kind of know what he is at this point, mainly like a speed-only kind of guy. And the pitching staff leaves a lot to be desired as well. Just not a lot to like about this team. What do you think?
Yeah, it goes without saying. I think his two most expensive pitchers outside of obviously Hader, who's been terrific, but Fried and Corbin have been awful. So that they haven't been that great. Fried not as awful, but for $22 he's been awful. So
Yeah.
his whole rotation hasn't been good. I will say this though, looking at his future, he's I don't even know if he has 12 keepers, but with the amount of money he's going to save by not keeping, and I know we're talking early, it's June, but if he doesn't keep Corbin, if he doesn't keep Fried, if he doesn't keep some of these other guys that were a little overpaid, maybe like a Brandon Lowe, stuff like that, he's going to have a lot of money heading into the reserve draft next year because some of his keepers are pretty nice moving forward. I think McCullers, Sixto Sanchez, Hader, Julio Urias, Vito Bruin, the prospect we talked about earlier. Obviously, he'd probably keep guys like Cronenworth maybe and stuff like that. But he's got some potential moving forward. But this year, his head-to-head record, I think, has been a little bit of a luck of the draw because I don't see a whole lot going on with this team. Jazz Chisholm, obviously another keeper guy. So he's actually got an interesting young core where going into the reserve draft next year, there is zero reason he's not going to show up with an insane amount of budget space.
Well, going into not the reserve draft, but the auction draft.
Yes, the auction draft. He should be going in with an absurd amount of money heading in.
Yeah. So he'll have money to spend based on who the guys that aren't kept are, and he'll be able to overpay for a lot of those guys to kind of pick and choose the guys that he wants and overpay and outbid a lot of guys. Whereas a team like myself, who I'm going to be keeping DeGrom and Acuna, that's $100 off the table right away that I can't spend. So, and then that's aside from before I even keep anybody else. So he's definitely going to have an advantage there. He's going to be able to get the guys that he wants to get to kind of build his team next year. Going through it really quickly, I only count about 9 keepers for him, but depending on how he thinks about at $22 Randy Rosarena or, $3 Garrett Hampson or $14 Verdugo. I mean, those aren't really values. I mean, he just keeps them just to keep them. But I mean, I don't think they're very good values, and I'd rather save my money and allocate my money elsewhere. All right. Our other 12th ranked power ranked team is going to be Team T-Pain, Tyler's team. It's not necessarily Tyler's fault. I mean, he could do a little bit better building around, but I mean, like we said before, when you lose Eloy and you lose Mike Trout, it's really hard to kind of recover from something like that. If I lost Ronald Acuna and I didn't have his 18 home runs and 50 runs scored, the standings would look a lot different as well. Same thing with DeGrom. I mean, if I lost one of those guys, I certainly wouldn't be in the top 3 right now. So, that definitely is a big contributor to that. What's your takeaways from Tyler's team?
I see a lot that I like. I mean, Justin Turner. Could we argue he's got 2 of the best $1 players in the league, Turner and Winker? I mean, come on. I mean, those guys are absolutely tearing it up right now. So they're doing good. He's getting a lot of OBP from the first base position from catcher. I don't hate his team. Kind of like you said, what we talked about at the jump. I think he overpaid for a couple guys he shouldn't have. Paul Goldschmidt, being one of them. And some of these other guys, but his pitching is just okay. Zach Wheeler's been terrific. He's been very much worth the price. Marcus Stroman has been very much worth the price, but he's kind of had to sign a bunch of guys. If you notice, I think he actually has more C contracts on his rotation or his starting pitching than he does A contracts. So, I mean, that just shows that he's been trying to finagle and do what he has to do to stay in there. But again, I don't hate his team. Do I think it's the 13th? Do I think it's the second worst team in the league? No. But I do think moving forward, he does have some potential. But as of this year, yeah. I mean, Goldschmidt has not been good. And like you said, Trout out. Eloy, I know he knew he was out, so we got him at a bargain at $8. But I mean, you're going to be missing those bats for sure.
Yeah. He's got 8 C pitchers and 5 A pitchers. So it's definitely not great. He's going to have some work to do. I mean, I talked to Tyler about this a little bit, but I think that there's 2 trades that Tyler can make, and I think he can overhaul his entire team and really turn things around for this year. I don't think he's out of it yet by any means, but I think if you were to trade Justin Turner and trade Jesse Winker, he could get quite the haul back. I don't know about the timing on which he would do that. Maybe it's not the time to trade Winker right now, but I mean, he's never hit better and his value has never been higher than it will be right now. I think that he could flip Justin Turner to my dad for a pitcher and a hitter. He could get a guy like Tyler Mahle or Rich Hill or Wade Miley on top of a first baseman in Eric Hosmer or like a Carlos Santana. If my dad looks at the value of getting Justin Turner for $1, I think that could change quickly. And then Tyler and I have had some negotiations. Ooh, I won't say too much, but I know I certainly would overpay for a guy like Jesse Winker on a $1 contract. And I could certainly overhaul his rotation real quick.
Right.
So for the record, I have Tyler 13th and David 12th, and Eric has Tyler 12th and David 13th. The bottom of the standings, Eric and I are pretty much in agreement on, other than those two, which brings us to our 11th ranked team in the power rankings. And that's going to be Mr. Crimmy Charles, Crim's crew.
Yes.
I'll let you take the lead so you can trash your boy Crimmy.
Yeah. And I think this goes without saying, but I mean, when you spend big on two guys, and not that they're even playing bad, Tatis is killing it. Soto's finally starting to kind of get going. He's over a 400 on base percentage. He had a little bit of a shaky start, but you're really riding on those two guys to contribute everything, but you still need other guys to contribute. I mean, Alec Baum has never been out of this dude's lineup, and I don't understand why he's still in. He's had under like a 270 on base percentage the whole year. So that one I'm not quite understanding. And honestly, outside of Tatis and Soto, like where do you see that production? Where do you see it? Salvador Perez has been struggling ever since he got off to that rock hot start. And honestly, his bat's never been something to praise about. His pitching has been okay. Musgrove's been really good. Kershaw's kind of come down to, normalcy a little bit, but you're seeing like a lot of 3s and 4s kind of guys. Taijuan Walker's pitched really well. And obviously Alex Reyes has been lights out, amazing, which is why he was able to make that Edwin Diaz trade.
Whip, though.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does have 1.4, but he strikes out a lot of guys. He's going to walk a lot, but he's got 100-mile-an-hour heat. But I know he's waiting for some of these pitchers to come back, probably Turnbull. Javier randomly, for some reason, got pulled out of the rotation when he was pitching really, really good. And I know he mentioned that kind of bit him.
They just got Valdez back, too, so I don't think Javier is going back into the rotation anytime soon.
Right, and he was pitching fantastic out of the rotation, so they got an abundance of arms there. Again, I don't hate his team. It's just one of those things, like when you take that big superstar approach, you got to hit on those $10 or less contracts, and they're not hitting.
Yeah, I mean, Crim's always active in trade talks. He'll definitely answer if reach out to a guy. And I've been wanting to make a trade with Crim, but I just like every time I look at his team, I'm just like, I don't know what to do here. So
because
like,
you want the studs, and if you're not wanting the studs, who else do you want?
Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to take on another $49 player and tie up $150 of salary between three players? I don't know if I can do that. I mean, I'm always open to taking on a stud, but I might approach that salary cap at some point if I do that. But like, and our holes are very similar, where I need a third baseman and his third baseman is Alec Bohm. So I mean, it's not great. Same thing with pitching. I reached out to him about his pitching staff to see if he wanted to maybe snag a pitcher of mine. He's pretty high on his pitching staff, but I really don't see it. I mean, Alex Cobb's got a 4.2 ERA, which is not good in today's landscape. Maybe in 2019, a 4.2 ERA is usable, but not this year, not in a year like this. Cole Irvin has been okay, but I mean, he's just been really average, only 50 strikeouts in 70 innings, and just okay ratios, not great. Clayton Kershaw, shout out Clayton Kershaw, is he's obviously going to be Clayton Kershaw. He's pitched really well. Joe Musgrove, I think there's going to be some regression there. Garrett Richards, a 1.5 ERA, and T1 Walker, definitely going to be some regression there. He's not going to finish the year with a 2 ERA and a 1 WHIP. It's just not. So, I mean, a lot of these guys, maybe Spencer Turnbull comes back, but even he doesn't have any track record of being any good. So I don't like his pitching staff. I think there's some holes here. I think he's relying on guys like Alex Cobb and Cole Irvin to be like his 3, 4, and 5 starting pitchers. But his back end of his rotation really needs some improvement. And a lot of like you said, the gaps in between outside of Tatis and Soto, they can only carry him so far.
Agreed.
All right, so that brings us to our 10th ranked team in the power rankings. Coming in at number 10 is going to be my brother, Justin Thinger. So Justin, Angels in the Trout field. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. His offense just has not shown up. He's got a lot of guys that just aren't really hitting that well. DJ LeMahieu, only 3 home runs. You're expecting him to have like 45 runs scored by now, but he's only got 33.
And the on base too. I mean, that's a guy that hits 330. Not that his on base is usually 330. I
But
mean,
he's actually
that's
more
tough.
valuable in a batting average league than an on-base percentage league because of his high batting average. I mean, he hits more than he walks. So, I mean, and for an on-base percentage league, I think his value actually surprisingly goes down. You know, Bregman, you're expecting a little bit more than 7 home runs out of him, more RBIs, maybe a few stolen bases. You've had 0. Francisco Lindor's 13 RBIs have obviously left a lot to be desired. Adam Eaton had a good week and then just hasn't contributed since. Mitch Haniger is, I think he's a better value at $1 than Justin Turner is at $1.
I've always liked Haniger. Yeah, that was a good pickup.
But a 300 on base percentage isn't great either. And then Aaron Judge will hit you 7 home runs in a week, and then he'll go 2 weeks without hitting you one, and then he'll land on IL. So that's part of the reason why my dad got rid of him. My dad got a top closer in Aroldis Chapman, who's been really good this year, damn near probably the best closer in baseball. And so, I mean, it's kind of helping both teams, giving them a need. But yeah, offense really leaving a lot to be desired. He has got a lot from his pitching staff. He's picked up guys like Luis Garcia and Nick Pivetta who have contributed. Ian Kennedy came over in the trade as well, and the trade for Kevin Gausman obviously helped him immensely, especially when he was able to fill his hole at catcher with Yermin Mercedes, who has slowed down, but I mean, he's still obviously got that upside. And for a $1 a catcher, I mean, why would you not make that trade? So trade made sense to him. He completely won that trade, not even an argument. So his rotation's been really good. It's been carrying him to where he is today, but God, he needs some of these hitters to turn it on.
Yeah, and I would argue, I mean, every single one of his 8 pitchers is probably keepable as well. I mean, Bieber's a keeper. Gausman's been pitching. Lance Lynn is an obvious keeper at this point. I mean, it's just tough because I know 23 is a lot, but looking at the numbers, right? Ryu's been pretty good this year. Like you said, his rotation's been solid.
5 A's for his pitchers, and I don't know if he's keeping Tehran.
Right. Yeah, not Tehran, but yeah, his other guys. But yeah, I mean, it's his pitching's really stepped up, and the guys he has picked up, Luis Garcia has been good. Pavetta's been decent. Obviously Ian Kennedy in the trade with the saves and all that. I'm sure he's waiting for Nico Horner to come back. He got off to a really hot start for the Cubs. 3 steals, high on base percentage before he went out. Marcelo Zuna needs to worry about a lot more things in baseball right now, so I'm not sure if he's going to come back anytime soon. But you're right. I mean, the Lindor, the Bregman, and the LeMahieu. Let's just look at those 3 names. And not that Bregman's been bad, but like you said, for $30, you want a little bit more than that. So if you could just really look at those 3 names and go, if we could get some production there, then we could start rising up those rankings a bit. But I think his outfield's a little weak with Baddoo and Eaton. Haniger's playable, but it's getting to the point where I don't know if Baddoo and Eaton are playable. Baddoo a little bit with his steals, but he's calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of has been on the roller coaster a bit this year. He had a hot start, and then he did nothing for about a month, and now he's starting to heat back up a little bit now that he's kind of starting to get his feet back underneath him. But he's also has not done a good job of filling in the gaps as well. I mean, his pitching has been well, but like you look at his bench hitters, I mean, he's not going to play a catcher at DH. And so, Bobby Dalbec and Hamer Candelario are not really playable at this point either. So it's like, you know, his depth, he doesn't really have the pieces to make a trade either, which is the big struggle now. He tells me that he's looking for a star. He wanted me to give everyone a shout out from the pod. He called in a little early, but yeah, he's always looking for a star. He wants to get a big bat. He wants to get a consistent bat in there because you only got 2 guys with double-digit home runs, and they're Haniger and Judge. So he kind of wants, you know, a guy that he can kind of rely on to get him 3 home runs a week. But he doesn't really have the assets to kind of do that. Yeah, he could package a guy like Lindor or Bregman or Haniger or something to get a decent piece. But like, then what, he's going to fill in the gaps with Dalbec and Candelario? That's not really going to make him better. So he's kind of a little bit stuck in the mud here. He's going to be an interesting case at the deadline, whether he's going to be a buyer or a seller. But that $1 Mitch Haniger contract could be huge for him in getting some kind of pieces back. If you look at a team like Eddie, I mean, maybe a team like Eddie would say, okay, I'll give you Cedric Mullins and Trevor Story for a $1 Mitch Haniger because Eddie needs more keepers, something like that. Like that is a trade that could make a lot of sense for both teams. So we'll kind of see how, you know, the deadline shakes out. All right. Any more to say about Justin's team?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Like we said, if we could just get some of those guys performing a little bit better, obviously he's upset with the LeMahieu, the Lindor performance, but those are two guys with proven track records that hopefully can turn it around for him.
All right, coming in at number 9, who's been a surprising riser in the standings, but it is going to be the Beantown Boys, Mr. Bryce. Why don't you take the lead here on Bryce's team?
Bryce's team is getting contributions from where he needs to get them from. I mean, Ozzy Albies, Jose Ramirez, Xander Bogaerts are all kind of
very hot.
Yeah, they're all doing what they need to do. Kyle Tucker's finally starting to heat up after his horrible start. We both kind of bashed him for the $27 price tag there. We won't get into the other stuff that but yeah, we've been in trade discussions as we've seen in the chat, and we've got some different perspectives on certain players. But I know he's waiting for.
Hey, let it all out now. Now's the time.
I know he's waiting for Conforto to come back. Even Brandon Belt was having a decent season before he got hurt. So I know he's waiting for a couple of these guys to come back, kind of make those contributions. The pitching staff, and we're going to hear this word a lot, I think, as we move up these standings, is sustainability. His pitching is not great, and I don't magically see it becoming great. I think it's going to kind of stay where it's at. So like you said earlier, with how dominant his hitting is, I don't know if he can sit on his hands any longer. I think I know it's June. I know you could argue it's early, but is there any one of those names as a pitcher that goes, you know what, he's going to turn it around and have a 3 ERA on the year? Because I don't see it from really any of those guys outside of maybe a Charlie Morton. Maybe Paddock kind of has a better year, but I don't just magically see it happening, and he shouldn't wait for it either. So he needs to make a move for hitting yesterday.
Yeah, he definitely needs to move some hitting for some pitching.
Yes.
I think that he's got some guys that he could sell pretty high on. I mean, Albies, Tyler O'Neill. I don't expect Tyler O'Neill to finish the year with 40 home runs. He's got 15 now. He's a very high strikeout guy. He's just a hitter that's hot. I don't expect Tyler O'Neill to be like a top 20 outfielder the rest of season. So
Aguilar's on pace for 120 RBIs. That's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen, especially not in the Marlins either. 12 home runs, 325 on base percentage. All of his guys are pretty bad on base percentages too. I know he wants to hang on to Bogaerts. That's his boy. He calls him Bogey. Jose Ramirez, we've had some talks about Jose Ramirez, but I couldn't get him to kind of release his grasp on him. But I think he seriously needs to consider it. If he can kind of fill that gap somewhere else. I
offered him a really nice player straight up for him, and he said no. So
yeah, I offered him Ketel Marte and another player for him.
Wow.
Who that player was.
He's rising up the list. You know that list I have about people that are hard to trade with.
Yeah.
I know we've made a trade, but he's rising up there a little bit. He's rising as the days go on.
I don't blame him for being a little hesitant to trade with him after I fleeced him last. So I think he might be a little hesitant this time around. But yeah, you're right. I mean, his pitching staff, and he just got bad news on Carlos Carrasco too. He just stopped throwing off a mound. Carlos Carrasco did. So, like, he's not coming back anytime soon. He's not going to be his knight in shining armor. Jesus Luzardo isn't even in the rotation, although he's back. He's not really getting contributions there. Eduardo Rodriguez, you kind of have to hope that he doesn't have to join his rotation because that's going to hurt your ERA and WHIP. He needs to get called up yesterday, but he's hurt and he's just not pitching well. So, yeah, he really needs some pieces here to kind of string some things together. Hey, he has my number. Give me a call. I mean, we can work something out. I have some pitchers who can help you right now for the future.
I will say one thing for certain, and I think this goes without saying, but great addition to the league too. I mean, Bryce, I mean, I know we got him last minute. I think he was came from Chad, and he's really been active, cool guy. I think we got a good one there. So it's good to have him in the league for sure, but he does need some pitching.
Yeah. All right, coming in at number 8, we have my co-host, my co-commish.
Yes.
Eric Follman, Erox Dynasty.
Tell me what I'm doing wrong. What am I doing wrong? Or what am I doing good? Let me hear it.
Let's dissect this team a little bit. So you got Sean Murphy at catcher, who's got 32 RBIs, who's 6 home runs ain't great. 32 RBIs from a catcher is pretty darn good. Matt Olson tearing it up. Gene Segura, gross. Rafael Devers at third base. I'd love to have him on the squad of my own. Chris Taylor, Nick Solak, Grossman, Happ, Harper, Bellinger, Trent Grisham. You got a lot of prospects on the bench, waiting on Wander Franco. Clint Frazier is almost droppable at this point.
Yeah.
He's playing every day. Traded for Luis Robert. So it's not like that injury really hurt you. Pitching staff is decent. We got Disclafani, Mike Minor, Robbie Ray, Scherzer, Blake Snell, Woodruff, Will Smith. Now, with some of these teams, you've had some disappointing performances. I think your team is kind of ebb and flow. You need some guys to pick it up. I think that Nick Solak and Chris Taylor got off to some unsustainable starts, and that's why you're kind of wondering, oh, well, some of these guys, now they got Cody Bellinger back and Grisham back, shouldn't I be kind of going up in the standings? But now you're kind of some of these Chris Taylor, Nick Solak, Robbie Grossman types, they're kind of coming back down to earth as you're getting Cody Bellinger back. But also getting Cody Bellinger back and him only having 1 home run and 9 RBIs isn't exactly a contribution either after 60 at-bats.
And Bryce Harper, 15 RBIs. I mean, none of his numbers are bad. He's got steals. His home runs average to about 30 a year on 600 at bats. His OBP is fine. He's just not driving runs in, man. I don't get it.
He's on pace for 45 RBIs. Is that
right? No, sorry. He's still on. He's on. If he gets about
we're a third of the way through the year, right?
Just about it. But if you're going off, I mean, theoretically,
he's not gonna get 600 at bats, so he's probably gonna get 500 at bats this year. So he's close to about 50 RBIs this year. That's not too great.
That's what I'm saying, and it's not like he's even hitting bad. He's got the OBP. He's got the. I don't know. I don't get it.
And then pitching staff, Disclafani, I'm not entirely sure what he's going to be. He's pitched well, but he's not even getting you a strikeout in an inning. We'll see if there's any regression for him, but I think his 3.5 ERA is probably to be expected from him at this point. Maybe some regression in the whip, but maybe not. He's not a big strikeout guy, so maybe he's really well at reducing contact this year. Mike Minor, you don't really like him. To have him in your rotation after all this time is still kind of shaky. Bad ERA. The whip isn't killing you. Decent strikeout numbers, just above 1 strikeout an inning. Robbie Ray, you're just going to kind of milk as much as you can out of Robbie Ray while you can. He's pitched really well. You can't really criticize what he's done so far, but I mean, he also has that track record of being like a 5 ERA guy for almost his entire.
He's always been a huge K guy, though.
He has. He always knows how to strike people out, but his ERA by year is actually, he actually pitched really well in 2017, 2.89 ERA. The last 2 years, 3.9, 3.4, 4.7, 7.8, and then 6.6 with those 2 years, teams combined in 2020. So I don't know if that's sustainable. I don't know if maybe he just found the magic formula. He's been drinking MJ special stuff or what. Brandon Woodruff, you can't argue with what he's done so far. He's been like a top 5 pitcher in the league, but there was some interesting stuff about some spin rates with him. His spin rates beat down after his last start. Are you concerned, Eric?
No, I'm not concerned.
Did you put it up to him? I mean, you're the manager here. Have you been colluding with him and getting him what he needs to kind of up those spin rates?
A little bit. I mean, he hasn't. That was his worst start of the year outside of literally opening day, which still wasn't a bad start. A 3.6 ERA, 9 Ks, but a lot of that stuff going around baseball lately. I hope it's just not my guys, right? Hopefully it's just not my guys.
And then Blake Snell, you really need Blake Snell to turn things around. He pitched really well in his last start, but I don't know if that's the new norm. I mean, Blake Snell went 27 starts without going 6 innings. So, I mean, he's not going to go deep into starts. So even if he does pitch well, he's not going to go deep enough into games to really have an impact. He's got 80 strikeouts, so he only got 54 innings. It's weird to look up and see that he's pitched less innings than Mike Minor and Disclafani and Robbie Ray and some of these other guys. Like it's just a guy that only gets 5 innings per start. It's hard to really impact your team. At least he's getting the strikeouts, but he also only has 3 wins and quality starts because he can go deep into games. He's not getting the wins, and he's certainly not getting the quality starts because he's not pitching past the 6th inning. So I think, the pitching staff, I don't think it's great. I think there's some improvements that could be made there. Brandon Woodruff is a great start. He's a great 1. We didn't think he was going to be 1 going into the year, certainly. He's been a great 1.
Hey, man, I paid 28 for him. I liked him a lot.
And I forgot to mention Scherzer. So I guess if Scherzer's your 1, Woodruff your 2, that's an incredible start to your rotation.
I think, and that's the weird thing is, when you look at the rotisserie ratings, my whip and they're not good, obviously, because I have a couple bad guys, but I would argue I'm one of the few teams, if one of the only teams that has 2 true aces.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of teams have 1. I know, like myself, Jay, some of those, I don't know if I got to look at closer at Peter and Chad's teams, but I know Phil's another team that comes to mind. He's got 2 true aces as well.
Right.
Not many teams do, but the offense, I don't know. You kind of got question marks here. I don't know if some of these seasons are sustainable. I don't know if Matt Olson's sustainable. I think Devers is. I don't know if Chris Taylor and Nick Solak are going to kind of turn it back around. So we'll kind of see what happens with the offense, but certainly Cody Bellinger, Bryce Harper, and Trent Grisham, we expect them to kind of get you back on track.
Hoping so.
All right, coming in at 7th in our Roto rankings. So we are approaching probably like the average of all average teams. And what's a better word do you think for like average?
I think one out there. I know a lot of people use but I like the word blah.
Yeah, I think blah would be a perfect word to
Yeah.
use for a really just average team.
And with 14 teams, how many would be average? Right around the middle, right?
Yeah, 7. Hey, shout out to David because we actually have him as slightly above average because halfway of 14 would technically be 7.5. So he's on the top. He's the last team in the top half of the league. David Long, just a blah team, coming in at 7th in the power rankings. David has really turned it on the last couple weeks. His hitters have been out of this world. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hitters with double-digit home runs. He's getting Brian Hayes back. Maybe Josh Bell's turning things around. Kyle Schwarber's got 9. Hunter Renfroe is going to give him some power. Rizzo hopefully turns things around. And those are just the guys that don't even have double-digit home runs. So I'm really liking where he's at with his power numbers. His offense looks really good. He doesn't really have any stolen bases outside Javier Baez. And then his pitching staff, he's got some good C pitchers in there. I don't think Kyle Gibson's going to sustain what he's doing. Sonny Gray just landed on IL, but he is substituting quality for quantity, and he's got 7 of his 8 bench are starting pitchers. So what do you have to say about Dave's team?
I'll say this. I honestly think his offense is pretty solid. I think he's got a lot of names in there. Posey's kind of having a turn back the clock year when I don't even know if he was draftable. And I mean, his offense was non-existent the last few years. Rizzo, like I said, starting to heat up. Altuve, Arenado, even guys like you said, Brian Reynolds, Schwarber starting to get going a little bit. My thing with Dave is those 3 names: Gibson, Gray, and Marquez. If they struggle, his team's going to fall apart. And I don't know if we think they're going to continue doing that. And you could even throw
for Taylor Rogers either.
Right, and that's the thing. Yeah, you could even throw in Trevor Rogers, who young pitcher. You're hoping this is kind of what he can bring, and he's an asset to the Marlins moving forward. But he's unproven too. So my thing is, I don't know. I know he's jumping up the rankings, but as we've said many times, it is June, and if those pitchers can keep doing what they're doing, sure, Dave will be in the top 5. Yeah. But will they? I don't know if they will. Marquez pitches in Colorado. His ERA has slowly been hovering up and up as the time goes on. Sonny Gray's whips a 1.3 with a 3.4 ERA. Like you said, he just got hurt. And I'll be honest, not that I'm the best with bench players, but like I don't know if many of those pitchers he has on his bench are even worth a bench spot.
No, not really. I mean, some of these guys, like they're kind of grizzled veterans at this point. They're really just like the block scrap heap of veteran.
Right. I mean, which of those guys belong on the roster right now? I mean, you throw them in for what, a 5 ERA? Sure, let's do that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Logan Webb was having a decent season before he got placed on the IL, so I can understand keeping him. But yeah, that's a lot of guys that might be quite past their prime.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what he's going to do with his pitching. I think he's definitely due for some regression with his pitching. Let me just take a look really quick. How many pitching points does he have on the year? Let's see here.
And that's the thing with him, with some of these teams, Roto-wise, that are up pretty high is he's high, but he's not dominant in any category. Home runs, he's 12.5, but there's not a single category outside of that where he's top 4 on.
He has to live up to his namesake somehow.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And that's why it's tough when you're these teams. It's like when you're decent or above average in every category, but you're not dominant in them, what do you really go for? Because you're going to be subtracting something. And if your team is built on kind of being above average and everything, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to give a little bit of shout out to him. I think he's done really well with his offense.
Oh, sure. Yep.
His offense, I mean, a lot of the guys on here are not average players. He's got some really high upside players. I mean, obviously, Javier Baez is the polar opposite of what that is. Kyle Schwarber, Austin Meadows. I mean, he's definitely got some really good names on his offense. I think he does have room to kind of trade some of these guys. Losing Kyle Lewis, I know he's probably going to be out like 2 months. So, unfortunately, he can't really fill a gap there. But I think if he can maybe trade maybe an offensive player for like a lower level outfielder and a pitcher, I think that would be kind of beneficial for him.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to number 6 in our rankings. And we actually have a tie. We don't have a 6th place team. We have a tie for 6th. And our 2 5th place tiees are going to be Jay and Chad, who kind of have some similarities with their teams. Where do you want to go first, Eric?
Let's start off with Chad's team. Sure,
All right,
let's
you
do
take
that.
it.
Yeah, Chad's team, like we said, got off to that really hot start, had a lot of power jumping off the bat. Abreu, Bryant, Gallo, who's been a little banged up here and there. But we're starting to see it kind of come down to earth a little bit. Franmil Reyes got hurt, Paul Jeong got hurt, who, obviously OBP wise was never good. His pitching's keeping him alive, I think, somewhat. Glasnow has been good, and Nola not so much. Again, if you remember in the very first show after the draft, I said he's got big name pitchers, but I'm not sure those were the prices I would have paid for them. That's what I said about Chad's team. I'm not a huge Aaron Nola guy. I'm not a huge Giolito guy. And Glasnow is decent, and he's proven that. Glasnow has been well, but Giolito and Nola are not worth the price right now. Giolito's getting his Ks a little bit. Nola's getting his Ks a little bit, but ERA wise, yeah. Oh my God. Not really living up to it, especially Giolito. Only 6 wins quality starts in 12 starts. You'd like to see those numbers rise a little bit. Again, not awful, but when you're paying that price tag, you really need more than that. I mean, now obviously Nelson Cruz has really, really calmed down. I think he hit 8 home runs in the first, 8 games to start the year and hasn't done much since. So it's one of those things where he really rose up high, and I think he's starting to feel that Sunday hangover.
He's got 1 home run since May 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, he's definitely slowed down quite a bit. Yeah, it's kind of wild when you look at you spent $28 on Woodruff and 37 on Max Scherzer, and you got 2 aces out of that, and he spent 36 on Giolito and 37 on Nola, and he didn't get a single ace out of his. Yeah, Giolito hasn't pitched well. Nola, you want to know a funny story really quick? I have Aaron Nola in another league. I got caught between a rock and a hard place in the auction where I had too much money and there was no pitchers left, and the only pitcher left was Aaron Nola, who was worth a damn. I paid $51.
Oh my! Just to get one. Wow. Yeah.
That is absolutely killing me right now in that league, because it's awful. Yeah, his pitching staff, he was pretty high on his pitching staff a few weeks ago, but I think it's kind of coming back down to earth. Karinchak, we thought he was going to take the closer role. We're not sure if he really is now. Daniel Bard, who's, a closer for one of the worst teams in the league and who plays in Colorado, so his ERA and whip are going to be extra high. Nolan, Giolito aren't really playing like aces. Eflin's come back down to earth after his hot start. He's a $1 A player, which is great, but yeah, he's kind of come back down to earth after his hot start. Glasnow has been his true ace, which has been good. He kind of got his 1 ace out of that at $30 he spent. Then Gomber, I mean, I don't really know his prospect pedigree that well. John Means will sub in for Gomber, which means his rotation will still be solid. I mean, he's still definitely got the names. He has probably one of the highest upside rotations in the league. So I like where he's at there. The offense, I can't really figure out why his offense, has kind of come so far back down to earth. And
he's had a lot of injuries here and there, but I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see. Yeah, I don't really know what his path is. I don't know. I don't really think he has trades to make. I don't really think that he's thing. I just think he needs to kind of weather the storm here and hope that his players play better. Hang on 1 second. Oh, sorry. He locked himself in the bathroom.
Wow.
I thought I heard him crying, but he couldn't get out. Sorry, buddy.
What the heck, man?
I'll say, guest appearance.
There we go.
Sure.
There's our league dog.
Buddy. Yeah, you want to be the mascot? Sorry, bud. Oh, yes. All right. So while I console him, let's move on to our other 5th place team. I'll let you talk about Jay's team.
Yeah, Jay's team, again, this is a team that I picked to be the champion of the league when we first got rolling here. And I like it. I think there is still a lot to be had with it. The battling swashbucklers who find themselves right at 500 in the head-to-head standings as well. I do think there are some tough spots. Obviously, Anthony Rendon's been awful this year. Jorge Polanco has not been good. Christian Vasquez has not been good. Trey Turner's been worth the money. Austin Riley's been great. Adolis Garcia has been great. So he's getting those contributions. Weirdly enough, I remember one of the things in the beginning of the year was he wasn't getting the right $1 players when weirdly Grichuk, McCutchen, and Riley are some of the guys that are really keeping him afloat offensively right now. Stanton obviously banged up a little bit here and there. We'll see what happens. Nate Lowe is finally coming back, who's got a lot of RBIs on the season. Garrett Cole, obviously his true ace. German's been decent as well as a $2 player. We'll see if he can keep that up. Made the trade for Hendricks. Casey Mize is starting to prove his worth, although he's not quite getting a K per inning. And he's going to rock the 2-save approach. Class from Cleveland and Jansen from the Dodgers there, both pitching really, really good to this point this year. Luis Castillo, what is going on with him? I've always been a big Luis Castillo fan. I am not sure at all what is happening to him this year. 2-9 with a 6.47 ERA. I mean, that's looking back at his career, that's just not what he does. And I don't know what's going on this year. And I think that's one of the big reasons. If he could have Cole and Castillo both putting up ace numbers, I don't see why Jay can't be a top 14.
I'll tell you why Jay can't be a top 14. Jay cannot be a top 14 because he has Garrett Cole. And who is his other top 50 pitcher?
Hendricks.
Are you sure?
I mean, not this year, but in terms of like
rest of season, who on the is going to be a top 50 pitcher rest of year?
That's tough. I mean, I would argue Hendricks will come back down more to his mean, but I mean, yeah, that it's hard to find one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Frankie Montas has potential, but he's pitched pretty like ass. Alek Manoah could be, but he doesn't really have any pedigree. Luis Castillo obviously hasn't proven. He's been on his bench for months. I think Jay needs to climb up your rankings and the people that are most difficult to trade with. I've asked him about Luis Castillo probably like 6 times, and he probably could have gotten a decent offer from me a couple weeks ago. He wanted like Alcantara and another one of my pitchers for Castillo. And I was like, that can't happen for a guy with an 8 ERA. Right. So, yeah, he's a little difficult to kind of crack, but I understand. He certainly has the names. I mean, if you look at his team, he's got like some star names in here: Rendon, Freeman, Trey Turner, Adolis Garcia, Giancarlo Stanton. And I couldn't be more wrong about what his offense has been. I told him my biggest criticism, like as you said, I thought his $1 players were awful, but his $1 players, as you said, he's got 10 home runs for McCutcheon, not a whole lot else, but just 10 home runs. Randall Grisham played really well, 13 homers, 44 RBIs. He's what I was hoping that Lourdes Gurriel would be when I made the trade for Lourdes Gurriel. And I think he's got some high upside in his offense, but I don't know what he's going to do with his pitching. He's got a lot of names. I know he cashed in Mackenzie Gore and Chris Paddock for Kyle Hendricks, hoping that Hendricks can go back to being like a top 30 pitcher, top 20 pitcher, maybe. But I just don't know if that's what he's going to be this year. So it's going to be kind of a curious case. He needs Mize to be like a top 20 pitcher, which he won't be. I know you're higher on Mize than I am, but he's pitched well. But I mean, you can still see it just kind of, all right, only 59 strikeouts in 70 innings. So he doesn't have a lot of strikeout guys. Plus his one ace, Garrett Cole, is going to be under a microscope the rest of the year with all the substance stuff. So we're going to be monitoring his spin rates after every start. He's going to be criticized by the media, and I don't think that's going to be great for him. I mean, I don't think it's going to be like, he's not going to be like turn into a bad pitcher, but I mean, criticism by the media will only hurt, and I don't think it really help him. So, I mean, yeah, he's got a good offense, but yeah, the pitching staff, I think, needs a little bit more help. I think he needs to trade for just a solid 2-3 guy, maybe 2 of them.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the thing with Jay's team is I think it is very balanced. Like you said, he's got the bats. He's got some pitching names. He really needs Rendon to step up. He's been awful this year. And you could even argue a little bit Giancarlo Stanton. You'd like to see a little bit more home runs, RBIs, and OBP kind of coming from that angle. Because like you said, although the $1 players are doing good, they were $1 players for a reason. Does Grichuk really get close to 100 RBIs? Does Austin Riley keep a 380 on base percentage the rest of the year? So he's going to need his stars to start going. Freddie Freeman was another one, if you think about it, that got off to a really, really horrible start, which is very unlike him. And now he's starting to kind of get back to the Freddie Freeman we know, slowly but surely.
Yeah. So for the record, I have Chad 5th and Jay 6th in my rankings. And Eric, you have Jay 4th and Chad 5th in your standings. So we both have Chad 5th. You have Jay 4th. I have Jay 6th. Now, coming in at number 4 in our power rankings is going to be our biggest disagreement. You alluded to it earlier, and coming in at 4th is going to be Chris's team sliding into the DMs. Why the hate for our number 1 team right now sliding into the DMs?
It's not really hate. I think he's got a very solid average playoff team. I don't necessarily think his climb, and this is that word we've been talking about, to the top is sustainable. Vlad Guerrero's been absolutely amazing. Probably one of the candidates for AL MVP. Bo Bichette's right there, doing his thing as well. So that Toronto combo has been great for him. Pete Alonso's been decent for him. JD Martinez, Brandon Crawford as a pickup's been great for him. But again, it's one of those things where, I mean, Benintendi, okay. Edmund, you're going to get the stolen bases from. Upton's kind of doing what he's got to do. Pitching wise, again, sustainable. Ian Anderson's been pretty good. Walker Buehler's been pretty good. Aaron Savali's been pretty good. He's got a lot of these really good guys. I still think he's missing, to really get to the top. I still think he's missing one more superstar player. I do. And I do like his pitching, because I think if they keep the seasons they're having, I think every single one of his A pitchers that is actually on his team playing right now, Anderson, Buehler, Savali, Manea, Peralta, and Hendricks, are all keepable. So he's
Crochet as well.
Yeah, Crochet as well. So I think he's going to have a lot of guys down there that are very, very keepable. So it's not that I dislike his team. He's jumped up to #1 in the leaderboards, but I don't think I don't think his offense and some of his pitching are going to sustain that. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I think his pitching kind of takes a little bit of a downturn, and I think his hitting takes a little bit of a downturn. I don't hate the team, but I don't necessarily love it either. I know you said he was going to rise up the rankings a little bit, and he was going to find himself kind of in the middle of the pack by this point, but he's I mean, exceeded expectations by both of us, sitting pretty at the top spot.
Yeah, I mean, even I was much higher on him last week than you are, or last time than you were, and I still only had him 4th.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and he's doing all this without George Springer, who is probably like his 3rd best bat as well. So, I mean, I think it's only going to go up from here. One thing about his team, though, and I don't know if we can really project this, but where are his injuries? Every team in the league has been ravaged by injury. And it's like, you look at his team and he's like, oh, wait, he hasn't. So I think that's part of the reason why he has kind of climbed the way that he has. I mean, Springer's been really the only injury to one of his like main guys. JD Martinez has been banged up from time to time, but like all the rest of his core guys, I guess Alonso had one short stint on the DL, but he was a minimum 10-day and he was back. All his pitchers have been healthy. So, I mean, he's been really lucky with the injury stuff this year. It'd be a real shame if things started to turn otherwise.
Don't mention it too much, right? Come on now. You don't want to have too many injuries on injuries.
It'd be a real shame if some of these guys, got a little banged up and he started to fall down in the standings. So let some other teams that are behind him kind of crawl into that spot. So I had Chris as my #1 team in the power rankings right now. You had Chris #7.
Well, they're power rankings, Kyle. You gotta have them go up and down a little bit. You can't jump them up too high. Jeez.
I have my power rankings as who is the team that I want to face the least right now, and I don't want to face Chris's team right now.
There you go.
All right, coming in at #3 is going to be Phil's team. I have Phil #4. You have Phil #3 in your rankings. So you're slightly higher on him than I am. I think there's a little bit to be desired. I think his team has come a little bit back down to earth from where it was. I think he's not really he can't really figure out his catcher spot. He plays Sanchez and Garver in the wrong weeks. He can never really time up when they hit their home runs. His first baseman, he's got 3 of them, but none of them are really all that much of a star. He waited too long to trade Carlos Santana. He had a few offers for him, but if you look at kind of what he's done, he had 10 home runs, 36 RBIs, and a very good on base percentage, but his on base percentage has come back down to earth. I think at one point he had a 413 on base percentage, and now he's back down to 370. I was telling him that. I said that he's not a 413 on base percentage guy. He never has been. And, the home runs, he's got no home runs since May 26th. And so, I mean, he's in only 2 home runs since May 16th. So, I mean, he's been a guy that's kind of really hurt him, and it's the reason why he's not in first place anymore. And he's relying on guys like Ramiel Tapia and Eddie Rosario and Josh Rojas, who just aren't really getting it done. They just aren't really guys that should be starters on a very good team. I mean, if you are a first, second, third place team, I don't think you have a Tapia and a Rosario in your lineup every week. Maybe as a fill-in for injury guys, but it's not like his major guys have been injured. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think his offense leaves a lot to be desired, especially when you're talking about, catcher, you'll take the on-base percentage that Sanchez has right now because his average is usually really, really low. But Simeon's been huge this year. Josh Donaldson's finally getting going as well. Mookie Betts. I would argue Mookie Betts has been a little bit of a disappointment statistically. 6 steals, 6 home runs, 22 RBIs. Again, they've had Bellinger out. You're really hoping to see that $46 price tag pay off. Michael Brantley as well. I think you're seeing a lot of guys kind of.
That's like on pace. I mean, for 600 at bats, he's on pace for 18 homers, 66 RBIs.
Yeah, I mean it's just not there, right? So I would argue that Carlos Santana is doing a really good job. Ohtani is obviously proving to be very much worth it, but we're still waiting for some of his big bats like Brantley and Betts and Donaldson and guys like that to really start contributing. Obviously, the big thing here is his pitching. Usually I look at the Roto.
League.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you look at every single one of his pitching categories, especially when you turn it on the Roto thing, I mean, he's top 3 in every single one except K's, and even in that one, he's got 10.5 points. So he's dominating every single pitching category, and this is where I don't like to do GM Trademaker too much, but. And I don't know how much you see A's and C contracts or how much people really care to look at that too much. And I like Tyler Mahle on his bench, and I see him as a $3 A, so I think he's going to try to keep him. But Rich Hill and Wade Miley, you're dominating every single pitching category. I would try to pull off those guys to get even just a mid-range, above mid-range bat. And you could easily fill that in with Tyler Mahle. I mean, it's just plug and play, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he did put it in the chat about a week ago. He said he's looking to give up some pitching. I don't think he got many bites, though. So I don't know if people weren't paying attention or didn't really send any good offers or what. But I know he certainly is looking to trade one of those guys, probably preferably one of the C guys to kind of sell high on one of those. Yeah, looking at the standing, he's got 61 pitching points right now.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely carrying him.
That's more than 3 total teams.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's only got 28 points in hitting. So, I mean, like that is kind of huge. Yeah, I definitely think it's the number 1 rotation in the league, led by Bauer and Darvish. I don't know if it's going to be the number 1 rotation come end of the year, but I don't see any reason why it couldn't be. But I just think like he's got the 1 and 2. I mean, they're kind of top like 8 pitchers, top 5, top. I don't think they're necessarily top. They're not really that top 3 or 4. They're not a Garrett Cole, they're not a DeGrom, Shane Bieber. Those guys are still kind of above them. They're kind of more in that like 5 to 8 range, which isn't a bad place to be. Woodruff has pitched better than him. Gausman's pitched better than both of them. So
I mean, looking at his team, he's got a lot of. I mean, really, when you look at it, he's got a lot of. No one would complain about 2s, right? Yeah. A lot of. I mean, Bauer's been great. Darvish has been great, but you're right. After that, it's like a lot of really solid 2-3 guys.
So I mean, 41-year-old Rich Hill, is he going to sustain what he's doing? I don't know. I've always been
seems to do it every year. I don't get it.
Yeah, when he's healthy, but he's also never thrown more than 130 innings in a year.
Right.
I looked that up recently. His let's see here. His career high in innings pitched is 135.
Yeah.
So, and he's already at 62 now. So, I mean, it seems like he's a ticking time bomb. I don't foresee him having his career high in innings at age 41. Wade Miley, I don't think that's sustainable what he's doing. I just don't think that's the pitcher that he is. Chris Bassett is just kind of an average pitcher, very good whip for some reason, and quite a few strikeouts that just kind of come from the amount of innings he's been able to pitch. I don't know if that's what he's going to be going forward, but I mean, you can't argue with what he's been so far. I would say,
and it's an older rotation too. I mean, look at the ages there. Not that, I mean, obviously they're performing right now, but it's something to think about with 78, a lot of dollars being put into that.
It's a pitcher under 30 in the starting rotation.
No, not one. Yep.
That's wild. Yeah, so I like where he is. I think he's in a good spot. I think his offense leaves a lot to be desired there. But his pitching has kind of carried him to where he's been at so far. So great pitching staff, but you really need to cash in one of those pitchers for hitters, even if it means overpaying for a guy or just kind of taking a swing on somebody. I think him and Jay really need to get together and make a trade if they can kind of find some median ground, because he has the exact kind of pitchers that Jay needs, and Jay has the big bats and the big names that I know my dad likes. So interesting if those two could get together and kind of fill. I was gonna say fill each other's holes, but that would be something else. All right, so coming in at number 2, we have our aggregate score as myself, the commish, Burns when IPV. So why don't you take over this one and tell me what you think?
Obviously, you've kind of had a little bit of a fall from the top. You were kind of dominating the standings a little bit early in our first show, but obviously it was early, and you had a couple really rough weeks where you got hammered pretty bad, bad stretches there, but you've kind of stayed afloat, and you kind of went through that bad stretch, and just like real baseball, you're hoping that that's kind of the bad one for the year, right? Because obviously your team still looks really solid. Mancini's putting together a fantastic season. Acuna is doing what Acuna is expected to do. I do think you have a lot of guys in there that we'll see how they play out over the entire season. Gurriel, Pham getting a little bit older. France and Urshela are guys that I don't know. We'll see if they can be starters throughout this entire season. Villar finally starting to get a little bit of at bats here. Chapman has been okay. The offense, I still think, is missing a bat. I really do. I think it's missing a big bat to have. The pitching's there. DeGrom is absolutely the best pitcher in baseball right now, and it's not even close. He's having one of the best seasons in pitching history. Valdez has been absolutely fantastic. Lopez has been fantastic. And I've always been a huge Alcantara guy. And these are all guys that are keepable. I mean, you have your rotation set for next year too, but and I think a lot of this is sustainable. I like a lot of these names, but I still really think you're missing an at bat, because I think for a lot of guys, at least right now, guys like France, guys like Urshela, Gurriel, uh, even Villar, and some of these other guys really wouldn't be starting for a lot of teams.
Yeah, certainly. I'd really love to kind of trade in for a bat. I mean, I look at some of them at pitching here, and it feels like I have like 12 keeper pitchers. I mean, Alcantara, DeGrom, Lopez, Urquidy, Framber, Valdez, are all certainly going to be keepers next year. Logan Gilbert for 2, Kikichi for 5. I'd like to keep them. And then you got Gallon, all in IL. Gallon, Eliezer Hernandez, Zach Plesac, and Noah Syndergaard. It feels like I have like 9, 10 keeper pitchers, and I'd love to trade one of them in for a bat. So you guys know where to find me. I think the biggest kind of story for me so far has been the injuries. Not to make too many excuses, but I'm going to make some excuses here. But I mean, when you have Luke Voigt, Byron Buxton, Max Kepler, Corey Seager, Zach Gallen, Zach Plesac, Noah Syndergaard having a setback in his. I mean, it's kind of tough to recover. And I've had, DeGrom went on IL. Acuna's missed a few games. Ketel Marte was out for the first, half of the fantasy season, So a lot of these guys have really, if I was at full strength, I think I would be running away with it right now. I really need to kind of fill some of these gaps here. I only have 3 guys on my roster who have double-digit home runs. And so, I was dominating some of the hitting stats at the start of the year, but I mean, a lot of these guys just kind of aren't really performing, aren't really letting the ball leave the park. So I don't know if it's because of the change to the baseball or what, but I definitely need to get some bigger bats into this lineup in any way.
You got a lot of similar type players, the Phams, the Buxtons, the Villars in terms of getting steals. Obviously, Acuna is going to get steals as well. But yeah, you're missing a little bit of pop, and that's where the Carlson thing comes in. You'd like to see a little bit more from him, only being 22 years old, manning that everyday outfield position. 6, I mean, he's having a decent season, but you'd like to see a little bit more there. Chapman as well, having only 5, when I think he's usually, I mean, he's hit 25, 30 home runs in a season before. So, you do want more from that. And obviously you've had injuries. Marte hasn't played much. Seager's been banged up. Even guys like Kepler and stuff like that. So you're looking to kind of bounce back from that. I like your team. Obviously you're dominating in those 2 categories of WHIP and ERA. But a lot of the other categories, you're almost dead middle on, runs 7th, home runs 7th, stolen bases 7th, saves 8th, Ks 9. So you're really dominating a couple, and but you're not bad anywhere. You're doing the Roto way of keeping everything at least balanced.
Yeah, trying my best, trying to just weather the storm and get my guys back as best I can. But as you guys know, always open for business, always looking to improve, and we'll see if I can kind of do that before the trade deadline hits. All right, which brings us to our number 1 team in the power rankings, the only team we have left, Mr. Peter Panagakos, who is my kryptonite, who I can't stand his existence, who just his players decide that they're just going to have their best games of the year when he plays me, and all mine just want to lay eggs for the entire time I play him. Mm-hmm. And that's just what it's going to be. I lost by him by 1 run last week, a full category. He threw a 7-inning and an 8-inning shutout on Sunday to swap ERA from me after I had a 2.7 ERA all week. It just sucks. I hate him. Why don't you talk a little bit about his team?
I mean, where can you go wrong here? Jared Walsh is a $1 player, right? Mark Canha, who I liked heading into the draft, and I remember saying it when it happened. I'm like, wow, that's a good play right there, getting Mark Canha. He could do a little bit of everything. Uh, Tim Anderson's been obviously pretty good for him with the steal department. I mean, look at his RBIs too. Walsh 40, Machado 37, Garcia 36, Correa 34. And like you said, we're at the third way point of the season. He's got 6 guys on his team that are on pace for 90 RBIs plus. So I mean, you really got to like that. And then if you're again looking at it as a third of the season, he has 7 guys on pace for 30 plus home runs. So his offense is obviously really killing it right now. 14th in runs, or I shouldn't say 14th, getting 14 points from runs, 14 points from home runs, being tops there. Obviously, the pitching's a little bit of a concern. He's not getting the quality starts. He's not getting the Ks. He's dominating in saves, and his ERA and WHIP isn't bad. But I think a lot of that has to do with his approach of doing a lot of the double save guys. Melanson's been great as well, but Martin Perez, Cease, we'll see. Again, a lot of these guys, Yarbrough, are these guys that are really going to be number one team in the league type of rotation. And that's where I worry about it. I do have him as a number one team. I think his offense is just way too good to not even – it's going to compete just on the offense alone. But some of these pitchers, I wonder, again, when we talk about trade partners, does he need to trade some of this hitting for some pitching?
Yeah, I mean, I have him as number one just because he's the bane of my existence, and I know every time that I go up against him, I just won't win. So, I mean, if I'm the number 2 team, I guess it just means he has to be the number 1 team. Losing Steven Strasburg, losing Jack Flaherty, certainly going to hurt him. It makes him have to play guys like Martin Perez and Del Nelson. Right. And I don't know how good those guys are going to be. Dylan Cease has pitched well, but still kind of a high whip. I think that's just kind of what he's going to be. Corbin Burns has pitched really well, but he's another one of those guys that saw his spin rates go drastically down in his last start. So we'll see if maybe if what he's done so far is unsustainable as well. Ryan Yarbrough is a guy who has pitched well in spurts, but never really over the full course of a season. So we'll just kind of see what he is. You and I do disagree about one thing, though, and it's that you think that 1 closer is the standard, and I think that 2 closers are the standard, which is kind of an interesting concept. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of hard to have 2 closers as the standard when there's 14 teams. That's 28 closers, and some of you guys got more than 2. So I wouldn't even say it's the standard. It's hard to even find a second closer sometimes because, yeah. I mean, really think about it. 14-team league, right? 28 closers. A couple of those are committees. Does every team have 2 closers in their lineup? I sure as heck don't. I know a few others don't. So it's tough that way.
Yeah. I guess it all depends on the kind of starting pitchers that you have. If you have high strikeout guys and you can afford to have 2 closers. If you don't, then you don't. I mean, right. Kind of weird. Peter's pulling it off because we weren't expecting Mark Melancon not only to have the job, but to get 19 saves. That's been able to sustain that category of saves while still kind of keeping everything up. So,
and although he's lost a couple names in Flaherty and Strasburg, and Flaherty's going to be out for a bit, but I've always been a big fan of Dinelson Lamet from San Diego as well. I think he's a good pitcher, and having him come back and kind of show that he's been doing well so far is good. Obviously, he's got his boy Cease. So obviously he's had some banged up injuries, which would put him even higher than he really would be, which puts him down a little bit. But those bats are too dang good to not be able to even get another pitcher, and this is even considering Yelich has barely played this year. I mean, Yelich has 9 RBIs on the season right now. So Peter's got to be feeling good.
Yeah, for sure. He's got to be feeling pretty good about where he's at, and he hasn't even had Yelich. So to get him back and to kind of turn things around there certainly help him. All right, so to review our power rankings, my personal power rankings go Chris at 1, Peter, then myself, Phil, Chad, Jay, David Long, Eric, Bryce, Justin, Jordan, David, Tyler, and Eddie. Your personal rankings, power rankings go Peter, then me, then Phil, Jay, Chad, Dave, Chris at 7, Eric, Bryce, Justin, Jordan, Tyler, David, and Eddie in that order. Before we log off, let's take a look back at some of our previous matchups and a look forward at some of the more pivotal matchups that we're going to have going forward in the coming weeks. First one I want to look back to is number 5. We pointed out Chris versus Peter as a pivotal matchup. And in that matchup, if I want to pull it up here, might take me a minute here. We saw our first glimpse of the domination from Chris's squad. Chris ended up winning that matchup 8-1-1. And I think that was really the momentum turn that his team kind of needed to kind of catapult him to where he was today. I saw it coming. Nobody else did. Shout out to my cousin Christopher, but that was kind of what propulsed him up the standings.
That was a big one.
Got him to where he was today. Next, in week 6, we talked about me versus Jay as being kind of a pivotal matchup to if Jay could kind of take a few off of me to kind of level out the standings, that would pay some huge dividends. And he did. He won 7-3 that week. Let's see if we go to next week, 7-3 that week. And that was kind of a big matchup there to where I should probably be in first place if I was able to take care of business there. But I had a 6.5 ERA that week. And let's see here. And Jay hit 8 home runs and just none of my guys showed up. I had a bunch of injuries last week. Corey Seager, Luke Voigt, Max Kepler all got hurt for me that week. So it was kind of a tough situation there, but just kind of is what it is at this point when you have a weekly lineup lock. Week 7, we had Tyler versus Eddie, which we thought was a loser leaves town matchup. Tyler really needed a win that week, but he was unable to get it. Eddie ended up stealing 6 categories from him, and that really hurt Tyler. What's that?
Yeah, I was going to say another big one that week is Chris, bolstering up these rankings with an 8-1 week against Chad. And then we had a commissioner battle that week too, tied it up 5-5. How about that?
I think we were kind of both happy to just take 5 categories.
Yeah.
Because I think neither one of us played that well. And so we were just kind of happy to escape that one. Week 8, we had me versus my father in a father-son matchup. I won 6 categories, so I was able to take him down a peg. He had like an 8 category or 8 win lead at that point. So I was glad I was able to bring him down a peg. Chad got back on track, knocked his buddy Bryce down a little bit. Crimmy and Chris tied up. You and Peter split just about even. Blah team was blah and got 4 wins. And Eddie winning back-to-back weeks, but still kind of finds himself dug deep pretty big in the hole. So the upcoming weeks, we have week 11 will be next week. Let's see here. So if we go to week 11, what do you think is the biggest matchup for week 11?
Hold on one second. I kind of accidentally clicked out of that. Why don't you tell them what my biggest one was on this one?
Your biggest one was going to be Bryce versus Jay.
Yeah, Bryce versus Jay was the one I kind of looked at a lot because I think, again, these are 2 teams that are really trying to prove themselves. You got Jay and Bryce, kind of middle of the power rankings, both sides, middle of the standings. Both teams kind of know what they need to get. I think this is, if one side goes 8-2 or 2-8 or even 7-3, that could be a pretty big change for both sides.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Another pretty big matchup I see there is Chris versus Phil. So that's going to be a pretty big matchup of 2 teams that have rose up the rankings and probably 2 of our top 3 teams in the league thus far. So if one of those can kind of do some damage on the other, it could really separate the pack of our teams at the top for a while there.
Yep.
Week 12, we have Bryce versus Phil. What do you have to say about that matchup?
That one I think is going to be, again, an interesting one because Bryce still trying to climb up those leaderboards. We'll see if he's for real or not. While your dad's kind of holding the fort, he was up high in the leaderboard, still is, looking to kind of keep that train rolling. Again, if Bryce can put together a good week this week and follow it up with another big week against your dad, that can really change perspectives on his team, and maybe we'll give him another thought moving forward on the next show.
Yeah, I highlighted the Justin versus Chad matchup this week as 2 teams that just really need a win. Justin really needs to turn things on for his team, and Chad really needs to kind of get things back on track if they want to be kind of considered as contenders in this league. Those are going to be 2 teams that really are going to need a win that week. Week 13, I have Chad versus me is actually what you had. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, Chad versus Kyle obviously is going to be a huge one. Chad kind of faltering. You're staying afloat. Both teams kind of, since our last show, have dropped down a little bit. You not so much as Chad, but both tough stretches these last month. And it's kind of one of those like, hey, this is a couple weeks from now. If one of them are still kind of holding float, is this kind of a sink or swim thing? I think that's more obviously for Chad than you because your team is still up there pretty high. But Chad's at that point now where if he strings together a couple bad weeks, it could really kind of take his season down. But on the opposite perspective, if he can pull together a couple good weeks, he could be right back in it.
Yeah, I'm looking at this battle of Jay versus you actually. So I'm gonna kind of turn the tides on you a little bit here. This matchup will end at July 4th. So with that, we are gonna have a pretty clear picture by then about who kind of the contending teams are, who kind of really needs to make some drastic moves. And if this is one that you lose and you still find yourself in about 10th, 11th place, it'll be interesting to see kind of what you decide to do kind of rest of year. And Jay as well. I mean, like we talked about, Jay's got the big names, but we don't know if his guys are actually going to put things together, if those fringy 50 to 70 range pitchers are going to pitch well for him, if they're just going to fall off a cliff, especially if they're cracking down on the substance stuff. I
Right.
think we're going to see a bigger spread between the elite pitchers and the not so elite pitchers. And so we're going to really kind of separate the men from the boys in this matchup and kind of see who's going to kind of try and build some momentum towards the end of the year.
Heck
And
yeah.
then in week 14, you have Peter versus Jay.
Yeah, Peter versus Jay for week 14. I look at that one as Jay again. These are two winners, right? You had Peter as your winner. I had Jay as mine. So I just kind of looked at that as a fun little, almost middle of the season, probably a little bit more than middle of the season, right? If we're talking about playoffs and when they're starting fantasy wise, but kind of in that middle of July moment where it's like, hey, we got Peter, we got Jay battling out, and those were our two preseason picks. So kind of be fun to see where they're at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And in this matchup, I mean, right at the top, me versus Christopher. We'll see how the standings shake out by then. A lot can change between now and then, but these are
That's a
going to be
big
like
one.
two of our top 4 teams. I'm hoping I can kind of get Buxton back next week, Seager back in maybe 2 weeks, and kind of get back on track with my offense and maybe catch some ground on Christopher. Maybe we might be the top 2 teams at that point, but
That
we'll
could
see.
be huge.
And yeah, this matchup could have some huge ramifications. All right, so that just about finishes up what our agenda is. You have anything else you want to talk about, Eric?
It's getting fun. It's getting fun, and we really are getting to that point where, like you said, I don't know the exact trade deadline for the league, but we are getting to that point once you start heading into
August
July. Just
24th. I think I put it pretty late.
yeah, so it is pretty late right before the playoffs could start. That's probably getting real close to playoff time. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see who starts selling off because you don't really want to say any teams out of it right now, but it gets to a certain point, which is what makes it fun with the head-to-head that 6 teams can get in. Because again, you can rattle off a few good weeks against not so great teams and feel right there in it. So I'm really looking forward to this next month and kind of seeing where the standings are going to be. Do we see so much parity? Do we see the 10th and literally the second team all within 5 games of each other? Or are we going to start seeing kind of that separation of the good and the bad teams? Are we still going to have this cluster moving forward? Because that's what it is right now, which makes it fun because every team still manages to find a way to stay competitive. So I think a lot of teams right now, I'm sure you talk a lot of trades with people. A lot of teams are a little hesitant to pull triggers on things. It seems teams are not wanting to do that. We haven't had any like big blockbuster trades lately, and I wonder when those dominoes start to fall.
Yeah, I mean, like you kind of said, I mean, between you and Tyler sitting there at 11th and 12th place, you're 1 week away from being in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that's it.
You're 7-3 week away from being a playoff team. 7-3, 8-2. You can even rise up the seeding there. So yeah, a lot can happen. Guys can fall from the top a little bit. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of how the next couple weeks shake out. Now that we're both off for the summer, maybe the pods become a little bit more frequent.
There you go.
Have a little bit more to say if the league decides that they want to shake things up a little bit more and give us some more trades to talk about. We'd be happy to kind of hop on a little bit more if
do a little 10-minute quick little reaction trade. There you go.
Yeah, we could have an emergency pod if Peter decides that he
start
wants
making some deals, people. Come on.
Peter decides he wants to have like a 1-9 week where he like falls in the power rankings like 4 places. Maybe that's something that we need to talk about.
Right.
Anything drastic like that.
I'm sure Bryce would love this. But maybe or some others would love this. Maybe we should need to start having like the worst trade offer segment. Like, maybe that's something we need to go. Like, what were you thinking when you sent this to my inbox?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can get people to submit those as well. They'd have to call in. But yeah, I'd love to have some more fellows on the pod as well. Let's see here. Predictions, any other bold predictions, MLB or fantasy rest of year?
MLB season's kind of getting into the swing of things now. I mean, well, it's obviously in the swing of things. We're in June, but baseball, as we all know, is a game of averages, and a lot of stuff averages out, and it'll be very curious to see how some of these teams do over time. Obviously, you got the Athletics doing really good right now, the Astros right there. The NL East is not by any means what anyone thought. The Braves under 500, the Nationals really doing really bad, Phillies under 500, while the Cubs still sitting there tied for first place. We'll see if that bullpen can hold. They're going to need to start having their starters go. I know it's today's baseball, but man, we need to start seeing some at least 6 innings, 6 1/3, 6 2/3 starts, or that bullpen could blow up real fast.
Bold take. The Cubs bullpen will not sustain what it's doing right now. Very, very bold of me to say that.
But that's the thing though with bullpens. I mean, they're so unpredictable, right? I mean, I remember the Cubs when they were rebuilding in like 2014 or 15 had like the best bullpen in baseball, and it was hard to even remember 3 of the names. I mean, that's the bullpen for you. I mean, it could just be so great one year with no names and horrible the next year with actual names. So my take on it is if you got a good bullpen, use it while you can, because they're sitting in first place right now and they got a chance. While some other Cubs fans think, Chris Bryant should be gone by August 1st. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
What do you think the Cubs do at the deadline?
Obviously it's tough to say with the thing they are. If they're within a few games of the division, I think they get like a mid-range 3 or 4 starter that doesn't cost them much.
I think that the Cubs will find a new way to break my heart, and it won't be a new way. It'll be the Cubs will stand pat. They won't trade anyone. They won't trade for anyone that will make any kind of impact. And then we'll look at each other in the offseason and go, why didn't they trade these guys while they could?
It's going to be one of those things where I think they get like a mid-range starter that's, not cheap, maybe becomes a free agent at the end of the year. Yeah, something that kind of keeps them competitive and shows that they're in it, because I mean, I don't know. I know that the Cubs got a lot back for Chapman that one year, where they sent back Gleyber Torres, top 10 prospect at the time. But I know you could always do the whole trade and sign him back in the offseason, but I think you'd be surprised how upset Cubs fans would be if a Chris Bryant gets dealt and we're within 2 or 3 games of the division.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been upset if we traded him 2 years ago.
There you go. That is true.
How do you fix baseball?
I would say, I know we've talked about it in the chat a little bit. Baseball is great, so I don't know if the word fix is necessarily right, but obviously me and you agree with the Theo thing on a lot of what he says. I think the mound back is interesting. Pitchers are only getting better in terms of training and regimens. And man, when I looked into that whole, they can look at spin rates and how much this does. And if you put your finger here, it does this. And now they have hot and cold zones on every player. I know there's a lot of home runs, but the hitters are at such a disadvantage, I think, compared to even 20, 30 years ago, when you literally watch the pitcher warm up and that was your tape. I mean, you went out there and you hit the ball. So I think it's changed so much that we got to get the balls in play more. I'm not so much against changing the shift, but we got to get that ball in play more and do all that. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's 3 things that they could do, and I've been arguing this for about 5 years now. First thing is outlaw the shift. You got to be on the left side of second, 2 on the left side of second base, 2 on the right side of second base. Put your outfielders where you want, whatever. That I think needs to be fixed. Next thing is lower the mound. You can either lower it or you can move it back. I think by lowering it and kind of giving a better angle, you're going to see more balls put in play. You're not going to see 100-mile-an-hour coming in from 6'5", hurlers, coming in at an angle like this. That's making it that much harder to hit and to hit hard. I think that's going to kind of be an easy fix to increase kind of contact rates. And I think that shrinking the zone puts a lot more balls in play. I think the first month or two, if you shrink the strike zone slightly, we cannot have a pitch that's 2 inches outside having a guy being rung up on strikes on something like that. You just can't have it. And you can't have inconsistency either. So I think if you just shrink the strike zone a little bit, you just say, the whole ball's got to be in the zone, or more than half of the ball has to be in the zone, or whatever you kind of want it to be, kind of like hockey style with the puck. I don't even, is that the rule? I thought it was more. I don't know. Christopher's going to get mad at me for saying this, for not knowing the rule. But I think that doing like kind of those kind of things, you're going to see a lot of more batters on base, which I think is the best thing for it. I think the worst thing for baseball is watching it for 45 minutes and not seeing a single.
Right. I mean, you're just seeing it's just the strikeouts. You're seeing too many, and when every reliever now, I mean, it was huge when you had a pitcher coming out of the pen that could throw 96, 97. I mean, that was huge 10, 15 years ago, and now it's normal. I mean, you see 91, 92 on the radar gun coming out of the bullpen. You just don't see that anymore, do you? Outside of the windups and some of the sidearm guys, some of the guys like that, you see 97, 98 from everybody, and that's hard to hit. I mean, it's hard to hit a baseball regularly. But when everyone's throwing 97, 98 and knowing exactly where you don't like hitting the ball, it makes it tough.
Yeah, for sure. Chris and I got in an argument, not an argument, but we talked about this last night, was what do you think about the pace of play for baseball?
I think it could speed up because one of the things, I mean, again, I hate to think about it, but I did exactly what Theo said in that interview was watch a baseball game in the 70s and 80s and really actually watch a baseball game and see the pace of play, because I think a lot of these older kind of, and I thought the same way as well. It's baseball. It's the only sport without a clock. Like, why are we putting a clock in? But if you look at these games in the 70s and 80s where they literally got the ball and pitched it within 20 seconds in game 6 and 7 of the World Series, not touching the brow, not grabbing the hat, not sitting out of the box, collecting your composure. I don't mind a little bit of that, but to sit there and say, this is how the game's been forever. No, it has not been like that forever, because again, you watch one of those old games on MLB Network and the pitches were getting thrown at a regular basis and pace. So I think there does need to be a little bit of a speed up. I'm a fan of the extra innings runner at second. I'm a fan of things like that. But it's going to take like a wholesale change, because even when they tried to do the whole stay in the batter's box thing a couple years ago, clearly that hasn't worked because no one follows that.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. I don't think the pace of play is necessarily the problem. I think they could speed it up a little bit. I mean, the pitching changes, the commercial breaks, like all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that everybody's so damn stubborn. Like, they could very easily cut down the commercial breaks. And, when you go to commercial for 2 minutes, that's when I feel like you turn the game off. But like, players don't want to make less money. So where are you going to get that money from? That's where the money is. It's in the TV money. So you say, oh, well, the commercials can be shorter and don't go to commercial when there's a pitching change. But the players don't agree to that. The Players Association will not agree with that because they're so stubborn, because they want their money, and they can't get their money unless the TVs are willing to pay for the commercials. So it's kind of everybody's fault. The thing that Christopher and I were disagreeing on yesterday was, if you put a runner on first and the guy throws three pickoffs in a row, how much of a problem do you have with it?
Yeah, I've heard rules where there's a limit. And there's times where it becomes excessive in a game, but I don't. Again, we're talking about instances where we might kick off a minute and a half, 2 minutes on a game, and certain issues like that. I think arguably, I just think there needs to be, you get the ball and that pitch needs to be thrown in 25 seconds. So I think me and you might disagree on that a little bit. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of a clock, but if you look at the average game time from the 80s compared to today, maybe a little bit of that is longer commercials or more advertisements. It's pretty different. So I don't know. I don't think the pickoff thing's a huge thing, but yeah, limit it to 2 or 3 times. But then you get it where that dude's going to make you throw it 3 times and then take off on you. So is there really a solution to that? It's tough.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I think that I'm not anti-pitch clock. I think it would be fine. I think just to kind of get the ball moving and get the ball in play is fine. But like, the thing that I always say, and I said yesterday, was like, if a guy is throwing 3 pickoffs at first base, and if it's a guy like Tim Anderson on first or Javier Baez, whoever else on first, I'm on my edge of my seat, especially if it's like you're down by 1 run and you're anticipating, is the runner going to steal? Is the runner not going to steal? Like, especially the people that watch baseball and understand like the kind of what's going on in that situation, and trying to like know, like, I want like a separate window to know like whether or not the runner is going or not. So like, I care if like how the pitcher is holding him on and like all that was
right.
And so like, it's so much better than just like staring at my phone and being like, okay, oh, did he hit a home run? All right, cool. 5 seconds of yay. Okay, all right, now back to.
How much of that is just getting the pitcher in the bullpen ready, though? I mean, throwing over. I mean, there's got to be some of that too. I mean, it's just extra time that they're taking to get guys ready. Or when the catcher comes out, they sit there and talk for a minute and a half. Oh, now the manager wants to come out and pull the pitcher. That's the type of stuff that I just don't think is necessary. And that's the type of stuff that could take 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes off of a game. I mean, that irritates the heck out of me when you see a catcher go out and then the manager go out 2 minutes later to get that bullpen pitcher 4 extra pitches. That's just, I don't think it's needed.
Yeah.
They warm up when they get to the mound another 15 pitches. What do you need 4 more in the bullpen?
Exactly. Yeah, I think pitchers should walk into the game and the game should start. I don't think you should really get warm-up pitches. I think you should get
Right.
make sure that the mound is on straight.
Now, not to take too long, but like we're both teachers, what is the baseball likability right now among high school, junior high? Do you see it as much as when we were kids? Or I mean, I think that's a valid question.
I really don't. And to be honest, like, I think I'm still I relate to that generation. Like, we're young enough to kind of do that, to where, like, even me, like, I haven't sat down and watched an entire baseball game from start to finish this year. And like, it's weird to say that because a guy that played baseball for 14 years, who knows the in and outs of the game.
Right.
Like, to be honest, like, I would rather be playing video games with the little free time that I have. I just like don't sit down and watch the games. And I can't even really tell you what the fix would be. I just know that like I want a little bit more action in the games. If I'm gonna watch it on TV, or if I'm gonna be there, or I just know I'm gonna be looking at my phone, checking my fantasy team while I'm watching the game. That's my biggest thing. Or I'll put it on in the background while I'm playing video games.
That's what I do a lot. I have my laptop right next to me and I'll be playing the show while I'm watching the Cubs game. So, I mean, a lot of times I'll play, I mean, out of the 60 something Cubs games, I've probably seen 40, 45 of them from start to finish, but I don't have, 100% of my attention always on it, like you said. But I'm kind of the same way with the kids. You start to see a few out there that are obviously big baseball heads, but basketball and football right now, and I'm not necessarily saying that means basketball is a more popular sport, but that gets talked a lot about more in my school. So
definitely marketability.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely more marketable. All right, we're at 5:30. We should probably log off. We're probably at like the 2-hour mark of this pod. So
yeah.
So I hope this is long enough for you guys. I hope you guys get everything you want and answer all your questions and take everything personally that we said.
Yes, please do.
All right, any closing thoughts?
Nope. We'll get back at it again in about a month. It'll be fun, and we'll see where we're at in July.
All righty. Good luck to everyone. Not really, but peace out, Eric, and good luck to the rest of the year.
See ya.